cover on there.
What makes you think that? No, to be honest, I've put the cover on this because it takes so long to put on.
Circuit Race Championships for elite women from beautiful Redcar in North Yorkshire, this lovely seaside town on the coast. This particular area has been host to the British National Champions championships this year. We've got the road races to come on Sunday. We had the time trials just a couple of days ago, and today it's time for the criteriums, or the circuit races as they are known. 55 minutes of racing plus 5 laps of this circuit. What a wonderful crowd assembled here. And looks like we've got a marching band as well. I think this is an opportune moment to introduce ourselves. I'm Matt Stevens, and alongside me, former professional and the Director Sportif of Canyon SRAM, Danny Christmas. Danny, Crit Championship, Circuit Race Championship, City Centre Racing. It's fast, it's furious, it's exciting. British Championships. It's all about the stripes tonight, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. There's a stripy jersey up for grabs tonight, and all of these women will be extremely motivated to take that back towards their team. So yeah, I think we're going to see some aggressive racing from the off.
We see little riders making sure they're fueled up. Start times in around 7 or 8 minutes. We've got around 70 riders. There's a limit to the size of the field in circuit races, as the band continue on in the background, adding a little bit of atmosphere to proceedings here. It's a balmy evening. We've had hot conditions all week across the UK, although we've got the sun slightly occluded. You just see the ships just on the coastline there. We've got a slight tailwind finish as well, cross tailwind. Interestingly, for a location on the coast, the wind actually blowing inland and out to sea, but that's still resulting in a bit of a tailwind as we look at a couple of local fans. Clearly cyclists there, Danny, on the side of the road. There's something quite special about circuit races per se, isn't there? They're generally held in the evening, so there's a real carnival atmosphere at this sort of event, isn't there?
Yeah, what else do you want to do on a Friday evening? Go and have a beer, watch a bike race. It's going to be great fun.
Well, the circuit itself is approximately 1 kilometre round, and there are 6 corners, and the finishing straight from the final left hand there is 330 metres. They then pass through the finish line for another 100 metres and swing left. And I've no doubt that the riders, well, we've seen them earlier on doing a good warm-up. Many of these riders, I'd imagine, would have been out earlier on today. I mean, you've ridden crits before. You're a Director Sportif of a professional team, Danny. You know what the score is, but what sort of day leading up to the championships would these riders have had today to prepare themselves, to get themselves physically and mentally in the right place?
When you're racing in the evening, it can be quite a long day. Looks like a bit of an issue here for one of our Boom Pods riders. I think she has actually got a bike to ride.
Yeah, that's clearly a slight state of panic. I hope she's okay. She's looking for a spare. Not very easy to run in cycling shoes. Well, she's doing a good job there, to be perfectly honest with you. So lots of families out today. Punch and Judy on the left-hand side. So Redcar in Cleveland are the hosts for these British Championships. In terms of the Women's Circuit Race Championships, last year's winner was Josie Nelson. She's not defending. She will be racing on Sunday in the road race. But we do have Emma Jeffers, who's now a senior, incredibly, her silver medal last year. was when she was a junior, so he has to be one of the riders to look out for. We'll go through the field a little bit later as the race unfolds, but good to have Emma Jeffers here, silver medalist. Can she step up? That is the big question.
Yeah, that's right. Emma Jeffers, now, well, still only just 18 years of age, wearing number 17 on her back, riding for the Das Handling Bikes team. So yeah, as you say, finished second place last year, riding that on junior gears as well. It's really quite impressive, so looking forward to seeing what she can do today.
Definitely, they're all lining up. This is where the nerves will be jangling as well. Now on the left hand side you've just got the pit lane there as well. That's where riders will get bike changes. But a few years ago, Daniel, this is a really important aspect to talk about and discuss as we look at some of our ones to watch. Joe Tyndall from the Pro Noctis Heidi Klesden team, Jenny Hall of Tekkers CC, a real dynamic team. Tekkers, quite an exciting squad. Sammy Stewart of Das Handling Bikes, Josie Knight from Team Spectra Cannondale, Emma Jeffers, we've already talked about her from Das Handling Bikes as well, and then Megan Barker of Team Inspired, another exceptionally talented rider. But yeah, the pit lane on the left hand side, as we see that rider running back, hopefully she's got things sorted. That's where they get a spare wheel or a spare bike if they need it. But I'm correct in saying there's no laps out anymore. There used to be, but that's a thing of the past now, isn't it? It
certainly is. So unfortunately, if you do have a problem, a mechanical, a puncture, you can go into the pits, get your bike fixed, or pick up a spare bike. But you do have to try and get yourself back in. So it's going to be really challenging for the riders.
So we'll be having a look in a little bit more detail at the route in a moment. Really good crowd here on the finishing straight. You can just see the British cycling flags on the right hand side, giving an indication of the wind direction. But let's have a look at the route today here in Redcar. Let's have a look at the technical aspects of this 2023 National Championships.
Everything thrown into its 1 kilometre length.
A few technical issues there. We might get back to that a little bit later. But what I can tell you is it's an anti-clockwise circuit with 6 corners, a pretty long finishing straight of around 400 metres, a couple of little chicanes as well, but no real elevation at all here on this one down here. It is a flat, fast circuit, isn't it? But it's technical. As 6 corners in a kilometre means you're going to be on the gas, braking, back on the gas again. There's a real particular dynamic to circuit racing, isn't there?
Oh, there absolutely is. And, you really need to be positioned well towards the front so that you can really take your own lines into the corners. And, as you say, just carry as much speed through each of those 6 corners per lap that the riders will have to tackle. So, yeah, it's going to be brutal tonight.
It's exciting, isn't it? Brutal yet exciting. That's why we'll have our bike racing. That's why we'll have circuit races. The first British Championships for elite women on the circuit race was back in 1998. It's a relatively new addition, and quite rightly so. Coveted bands of national champion you then wear for 1 year, and the beautiful thing about being a national champion or a world champion, you then carry those stripes for the rest of your career on the tipping of your kit as well. So there's something very special. You can't understate how important it is for these riders to try and win that jersey today.
Oh, it is. It's something that will stay with these riders for the rest of their career. As you say, they can ride in the bands, put them on the sleeve, many years after winning the championship. So always a special time for the riders.
Well, the countdown begins. Generally we get a neutralised first lap, so it's a rolling start, although we'll soon see if that is the case, but generally that does happen. It gives the riders, and not that they really need it, all of these riders you would expect to have done multiple circuits already in that warm-up. Balmy conditions here, but as we just touched on, we didn't quite fully flesh it out, but a warm-up and getting the day right leading up to this is crucial, isn't it? Because you have to be absolutely on it. So different in terms of effort distribution than the longer road races.
Yeah, I mean, tonight's race will be very different qualities that the riders will need compared to Sunday's road race. 135 kilometres worth of road racing on Sunday, but yeah, with this race being so short and really intense for the riders, absolutely crucial that they will have warmed up really well prior to the race. But you know, we're starting at 6:30 this evening. It's been a long day for the riders already. You know, obviously they try and have a bit of a lie-in if they can, and obviously been out this evening looking at some of those sighting laps, and it's all about getting your nutrition right on the day, getting your warm-up right, and it can feel like you're just sitting about all day waiting to race.
I remember those days. They were long ago, Danny, but I do remember them. You cannot really ever settle, can you? I always used to like to get training and racing done in the morning, but waiting till the evening, it does put you in quite a strange place. It's almost, you just feel almost perpetually jittery, and it's very difficult to actually fully relax, isn't it?
It is, but I mean, what we have to remember is, you know, not all of these riders are professional riders, so some of them will have even been at work today, you know, nipped off early to try and get up here to Redcar and Cleveland for tonight's championships, and obviously many of them making a weekend of it as well, and going for the road race as well. But you know, we have some riders who also rode in the time trial as well back beginning of the week, so it is a really long week, National Champs Week.
No, certainly is. As I said, we've already had several National Champions jerseys distributed. 2 more this evening. We've got the men's race following on from the women's race. That comes at 8 o'clock, so make sure you stay with us for all of the action, and of course the podium presentation, the all-important podium, where the bronze, the silver and the gold medals will be awarded, and the aforementioned National Champions jersey, which the rider will then wear in circuit races for the following season. And of course, Great Britain really is one of the heartlands of crit racing, isn't it? The Americans do it pretty well, but really it's and we see kermesses in Belgium, but crit racing, circuit racing is something that we hold really dear, and we're pretty good at it, aren't we? We have been in the past.
Yeah, it's quite a niche discipline within
niche.
road racing. So yeah, as you say, it's very popular in Britain. Unfortunately, this year we haven't had the Tour Series race, very popular series of racing here for the domestic riders, which was a big blow to them. But hopefully we'll have that series back next year. So the winner of this race will be able to show the bands off with pride.
And it's quite an interesting point to raise. It's such an established and important series that hopefully will be back. As you said, the same can be said for the men's. They haven't had quite as much preparation, and we haven't seen many of these riders in action on this sort of circuit. So we could see, it's fair to say, a few surprises today, couldn't we?
Absolutely, and I think for the riders themselves, they also don't know who's in form when it comes to criterium races. Of course, we've had road racing, but yeah, this is a new experience for them this year.
It certainly is. Well, this is our first glimpse of the opening lap. It should be a neutralised lap. They're sitting right behind the motorbike, and this is our first real opportunity. And for those of you at home as well, to get a look at the field here and all the different jerseys. Some jerseys will be familiar to you. There will be several familiar riders, and certainly some riders that will be introduced to you for the first time. Breakout riders, that's the second left-hander. That takes them back into the high street. Good shot there. I can tell you they are actually riding a neutralised lap here. I'm glad I was right there. Could have been a little bit awkward, but yeah, this is what we call a sighting lap. But even here, though, riders are going to be trying to get into position, aren't they? Although they can't go past the motorbike, this is where the nerves again will be jangling before that flag finally drops as they pass through the finish line for the first time.
Yeah, the flag will be dropping in around half a lap's time, so it is an opportunity for some of the riders just to try and gain a few positions, bring themselves up towards the front, as you say, just sort of settle the nerves a little bit.
And it is quite a wide and sweeping circuit, isn't it? That's that right-hander, then the left-hander, which takes us into the furthest point of the circuit. This is where we head down Lord Street. Still 2 more left-handers that will take us back into the finishing straight. They'll be lapping this. What sort of times? It's going to, I guess, 1 kilometre. If we assume they're going to be riding it between 45 and 50 k's an hour around here at this sort of speed. So we're looking at maybe 120 laps, something along those sort of lines, you think?
Yeah, we'll get the stopwatch out in the first few laps, shall we?
Okay. We certainly will. Well, this is the back part of the circuit. And they'll be soon, there they are, just swinging back onto the finishing straight, and that little bit of a tailwind as well. Now, can you just explain, well, let's just leave the explaining for a minute, have a look at this finishing straight. This is where they'll pick up that little bit of a tailwind, but it is, as you were talking about before, look how wide that is here. It's a very wide circuit. We've seen some really narrow technical circuits, but wide circuits do themselves pose their own problems. And Danny, they are off. That was a pretty quick sighting lap, and the racing has begun. This is it. This is the British National Circuit Race Championships for elite women. 55 minutes of racing, and then they will get 5 laps to go. And already we've got riders being aggressive, getting to the front, and very, very quickly this field will start to thin out a little bit.
Yeah, immediately it was Millie Cousins of the Phoenix de Koenig World Tour team, one of the only World Tour riders in the race today, that took the race on straight through those corners. And it's now Lucy Lee of Das Hansling setting the pace.
Yep. In the competition field, we've got around 70 riders. There are some pretty big teams. There's lots of individual riders. Does that give a distinct advantage to the bigger teams, or does that mean that some of the individual riders can actually play a bit more of a canny game and not do too much work?
Yeah, I think the pressure really is on some of the riders that are from those teams that are well represented. When you have multiple numbers in the race, the pressure is on to deliver a decent result out of it. Sometimes we can have some of those lone riders that are able to profit off of that, but also it can be incredibly frustrating for them if they're constantly marked by teams that have multiple numbers in the front.
Well, this first lap has been done exceptionally quickly into the finishing straights. Look, already some gaps starting to open up at the back. I mean, probably the bunch at the moment is probably a good 15 or 20 seconds long. It's about 150 metres long, powering through the finish line. First lap is done and dusted. And what time are we looking at there, Danny?
We're looking at around 1:32 for the opening lap.
Very quick indeed. Braitini just taking them round the corner. That is a Lucy Lee again. Das Hansling bikes. A nice little play on words there, isn't it? We're talking about that before. Das, I believe, are a furniture company, and Hansling, a bit of a play on words for the Madison.
It's so Das Business Furniture and Hansling bikes. So nice combination that have come on the team last year, known as Cams Basso, and brought on some new partners this year. So you can see all of those riders up towards the front there in the blue helmets, standing out. Frankie Hall now of Loughborough Lightning setting the pace.
Really is a fast flowing circuit. I mean, some of these corners, just looking at the way we've been racing so far, you don't actually need to touch the brakes. It's just on the limit of just feathering the brakes or actually carrying the speed through. It's different for the riders behind. Obviously a little bit of speed taken off that one because it's narrower as they drift wide.
Yeah, but this is where we can start to see some gaps opening in the corner. So the pace being set there by Frankie Hall. Looks like Kat Ferguson, the extremely good young junior that we've got, has been winning races on the continent this year in things like Ronde van Vlaanderen and Trofeo Alfredo Binder as a junior. So really exciting prospect for the 17-year-old, sat in second place there.
She's looking very good, as you say. With wins like that at junior level, that is absolutely incredible. There we go, Lucy Lee, Millie Cousins up there as well, Francesca Hall, Darville, very experienced rider, Kat Ferguson as well. A couple of big fishes starting to occur. Look at the speed, the cornering here, the technique, absolutely superb. Carried a lot of pace into that corner, and this is a real bid here, isn't it? She's putting the pressure on here, that's for sure. Yeah,
she certainly is, and start to see some gaps opening up to third place. Emma Jeffers of Das Hansling noticed the danger, immediately trying to close that down.
Well, the junior that we were just talking about, straight over the top of that one. They managed to shut that gap down. And also I can just see moving up a little bit further back, one of the riders for your team from Canyon SRAM, winner of the Zwift Academy last year, Alex Maurice, is just starting to pick away through the group as it starts to thin out. It's all about positioning in these early stages, just in case it does split.
Yeah, it certainly is. You need to pay attention from the beginning of the criterium race, and there's no chance to just ease your way into these races. It's full gas from the start.
It certainly is. Well, Ferguson looks around. Hasn't managed to prise open too much to well, there's a length there, isn't there? But as soon as you start to open a length, it's very hard to close, and we're only on lap 3, and there's some big splits and a superb pace that's being set here. A lot of riders just struggling to stay on the wheel.
Yeah, this is quite incredible, isn't it? Just in the opening laps, and just look at how long the peloton is, all in one line, under the pressure of Kat Ferguson, the very impressive junior.
Kat Ferguson looks around in the green and black, and I think she's put everybody on the ropes there. Nobody willing to, they're a little bit worried about her already, but clearly many of the, we do see in it, and across both men's and women's disciplines, it's worth mentioning that quite often juniors can excel at this sort of discipline. It's short, it's punchy, and a lot of the juniors, although they're nowhere near fully formed, they've got a lot of those attributes already, haven't they? So they can really cause some damage.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, when it comes to junior racing on the women's side, with the road racing, it's normally around sort of 60 to 80 kilometres that the junior women are racing, so they're much shorter than the women's road races. So when the juniors step up in the road race, it's quite a shock to the system, you know, almost doubling the distance with which they're racing. But for these criteriums, it's going to suit them down to the ground. And as you say, we've seen a number of juniors doing really well over the last few years. Obviously, Emma Jeffers finishing second in this race last year as a junior on junior gearing, let's not forget.
Yeah, that's actually, there are several juniors racing this event as well. Some juniors do get dispensation, but in the championships they have to ride on junior gears. And can you just basically explain what that is, because it is quite important. Many of you might be listening to what actually is junior gears. Can you briefly just deconstruct that for us?
Well, given that I didn't actually ride as a junior, Matt, you put me on the spot
Oh,
there.
sorry.
Conveniently an attack.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit later. But basically, it means that the juniors, to basically protect their muscles, protect their knee joints, etc., they got like a lower gearing on board, and it maxes out. That's across the board. It's a UCI ruling as well. And so what you see is a lot of these juniors pedaling a far higher cadence rather than churning a big gear. Real pace being set on the front there. That's Francesca Hall from the Loughborough Lightning team, and she is cornering like Lightning at the moment. If Lightning could indeed corner, she's doing a very good job stamping on the pedals. Several riders already been jettisoned from the back, but again, our first few laps into this circuit, what are your thoughts so far? This is, well, I'd call this a really flowy circuit. It might actually be quite hard to split.
Yeah, it could, and I think that was the reports that we had kind of prior to the race, was that it is a very flowing circuit. And when we have those more technical circuits, you know, the parkour itself can almost split the race, whereas it's definitely going to have to be the riders that are riding aggressively today. Just midway down that front group, just caught a shot of first time of Katie Archibald in the Ceratizit WNT kit. That's a blue kit. It's got a red helmet on there. Finished 6th in the time trial back on Wednesday, and of course, I mean, she's achieved basically everything that there is to achieve in track cycling, and now trying her hand at the criterium.
We were talking about that at the beginning, weren't we? I wonder what she could do. She's just floating around at the moment. As you said, she's just moved her way up into a decent position. Certainly won't be trying anything just yet, you would imagine. I can also see Jo Tindley, the 2021 champion in the red of a Pro Noctis Haile Klesgen, moving up as well. But Jo Tindley, although she's got a reasonable sprint, she's the kind of rider that would like to go clear on her own, isn't she? Hasn't got quite the punch of some of the others. So she, I would imagine, will want to try and split this and maybe go alone. And she's starting to move up with several teammates with her as well.
Yeah, we often see Jo Tindley going on the attack almost from lap one, you know, really aggressive riding from the beginning. But it's her teammates coming up towards the front now. Frankie Hall of Loughborough Lightning still setting the pace, so she's obviously taken a lot of motivation into today and ready for a good ride.
And quite often in criterium city centre racing, it's all about being on the front foot. You do not want to be on the back foot in a criterium, and quite often it's worth expending, without being reckless, spending a little bit more energy to try and cause some damage at the front. Then you can follow the moves far easier, and if there are any splits, you're always at the front. So crits really, especially particularly technical ones, need to be ridden from the front, don't they?
Yeah, absolutely, and we've seen a number of riders really trying to set the pace now. It was so elongated, the bunch, in the first few laps. It looks like we got a little bit of a lull in the action as everyone just kind of regroups, an opportunity for some of the riders to make their way back up towards the front. They will have been breathing a sigh of relief if they were caught out under that last injection of pace.
Tindley can just see what we were talking about earlier on, the national tipping on her sleeves as they head down the finishing straight. A good crowd starting to build now, and one of her teammates on the front. I think that's actually Lucy, so it's Amy Gornall on the front at the moment. She has a look round, particularly active last year working for her teammate. Was the champion back in 2021. They've got a very solid team here. And now this group is continuing to thin, but you can tell when the pace just eases off because the bunch just gets that little bit wider. It's when the pressure's on, it gets stretched out and elongated. Cracking bit of corner in there. I nearly fell off my chair.
Amy Gornall just absolutely railing it through that corner there.
She certainly was, carrying a lot of pace. So much has changed over the last 10 or 15 years in terms of bike tech and our understanding of what you need to do to make a bike go quickly around corners. We've got far lower tyre pressures, far wider tyres. Most of these rods will be using 25 or 28 mils at a relatively low pressure. whereas you were talking about it beforehand. I was riding crits 110, 100 psi, you were doing the same, and we both wondered why we couldn't corner particularly well.
Yeah, that was, let's just say, when I was very new to cycling, I had absolutely no idea what I was doing. Yeah, wonder why you can't corner when you got 120 psi in your tyres.
It's all about that additional grip, and you can also run that lower pressure. It just helps with puncture resistance, or minimises the risk of getting punctures, but also the wider tyres, especially with an aerodynamic frame, they're more aero, and the rolling resistance is improved as well, which does sound quite counterintuitive, but believe you me, it does work, and you can actually see visibly the slightly wider tyres that these riders are running here. The bunch all together. There's Amy Gall on the front, Francesca Hall dropped back a little bit further than that. She's in the purple, the early aggressor. Tindley now just in the centre, having a look round. Another rider, that's one of the riders from Tekka's, just moving up the outside. Very distinctive kit. Very interesting team, the Tekka squad. Multi-discipline team. They ride on the road, they ride the fixed gear circuit as well as criteriums. Again, it's Hall who takes to the front again with another big injection of pace.
Yeah, Frankie Hall has obviously come into this race with an awful lot of motivation. She's expending a lot of energy early on, but Frankie Hall and Emma Jeffers just got a little gap there opening up. This is what you need to be really careful of back in the bunch, is that you can feel like you're relatively settled in their sort of 5th, 6th position, but you can never be too careful. If a couple of riders just start clipping off the front, it can be very difficult to bring them back on a technical circuit.
It can indeed, and quite often with teams with numerous teammates, teams of 3, 4, 5 riders, you often get an acceleration into a corner, and the teammate will simply just let the wheel go as well. So on a technical circuit, it's actually hard then to move around the rider in front and then close the gap, and in those several moments that have passed, that's when the gaps get opened up, so watch out for that as well. But clearly Hall has been instructed, or is just feeling good, to really try and make these riders hurt, and a little gap has opened up. Tindley in 3rd position as we head back into the finishing straight once more with that cross tailwind, and that's going to mean that any sprint, you could potentially see some quite long sprints on this one with that tailwind.
Yeah, it could be a really drawn out sprint in towards the finish. As you say, just over 300 metres from that final corner up towards the finish, so timing is really going to be crucial.
Certainly Hall takes them through again. Jeff is on the wheel. This field of 70 riders that started, continuing to thin out. Great call. Just look how much the bike is banked over, and as soon as the bike straightens up, she's back on the power again. Real aggressive, pugnacious style. And do you think this is she's just riding on feel here, or do you think Francesca Hall with the of the Loughborough Lightning team has been instructed to make it hard for her teammates? Because it's quite interesting, this one, isn't it?
I don't know. I think Frankie Hall will be trying to get her a decent result herself. You know, she is quite an accomplished criterium rider. She's the British University's road race champion, and she had a crack in the time trial on Wednesday, finishing in 19th place, but I think she probably would have liked a little bit better result in that time trial, so looking to put the record straight in tonight's Crit Champs. But yeah, I think she's come in with an awful lot of motivation, and you know, sometimes you can just get a little bit too excited early on, and perhaps doing a little bit too much work on the front, but let's see how it pans out over the next few laps.
So Emma Jeff is taking a drink from a bottle, because this will be just over an hour of racing in total. Well, there's a big move on the left hand side, and I think we know that is, don't we? Big move by the multiple world champion and track champion. Look at that. We wonder what Katie Archibald was going to do, and here is your answer. Just look at that aerodynamic tuck, and look at the gap she's opened up. Big move there from Katie. Yeah,
alarm bells are ringing in the bunch behind. Sophie Lewis of Das Hansling notices the danger there. The Olympic champion going up the road, that's not something that you want.
No, she's been notable by her absence. We just saw her floating around in sort of 10th or 15th place, just using these first few laps to warm up, and that was a big attack. There's not that many riders that can match the raw power of Katie Archibald in the world once she gets going, and she's looking to force a split, and she's doing a good job, but I think it's Jeffers who's managed to get onto a wheel here.
Yeah, Sophie Lewis of Das Hansling, also a very accomplished track rider. Just noticing the danger. Looks like Millie Cousins of Phoenix de Koenig as well. So 3 very classy bike riders starting to open up a bit of a gap here.
And the rider trying to bring them back is Joe Tindley. She senses the danger there, so she's straight on the front, not even waiting for a teammate to give her any assistance. quite often in a race like this, fast and furious, you cannot afford to hesitate. If you want to do something, you've got to do it now, and quite often that means doing it yourself. But Tindy now has teammates for company. It's Jeff is on the wheel of Tindy. She's not working, she's got a teammate in front, but it's important for the pro Noctis team to try and shut this one down, or shut this one down. But it's those last few meters that are so hard.
Yeah, it's going to be easier said than done when you've got Katie Archibald now just going solo here. Sophie Lewis of Das Hansing just failing to hold the wheel there. Millie Cousins also struggling behind her, so this is absolutely brutal.
This is absolutely fantastic racing. She went on the front, went again. She's so strong, but she's also got that ability to recover and just go again, and that's what you need on her. She's got the punch, but she's got that ridiculous endurance as well. Big splits being caused, and she continues to press on, has a look round, and that just shows her intelligence as well. There's no point in pressing on if there's lots of rods on your wheel. Those glances round are just to have a little look at the damage and whether it's worth continuing with your effort. But good riding there by Archibald, who's clearly, from what we've seen so far, determined to do something special tonight.
Yeah, it looks like we've got three very good track riders in the front here. So Katie Archibald, closely followed by Sophie Lewis, and then Megan Barker of Team Inspired, just making it up to the wheel. So interestingly, they are followed by Monica Greenwood, who was previously the British Cycling Podium coach on the track. So the coach is following them.
There we go. Fantastic stuff. Also just in the mid there, mixed Cat Ferguson as well. Another big attack on the left-hand side here.
This time it is Monica Greenwood herself. So Monica has had a fantastic season after stopping with her British cycling coaching and really focusing on her own riding. It's been a joy to watch Monica taking multiple wins out in Belgium in the Kermesse scene, and really stamping her authority on a number of the UCI races as well. So some really good performances from her so far.
Well, she knows exactly what to do, as well as being very strong with that intellect, that racecraft as well, that knowledge of what to do and when, and also that confidence that you have in yourself, all the qualities of a coach, and you're looking after yourself, enormously invaluable. And of course, it's knowing when to go, but also when to back off as well. That in itself is a skill. It's all about conserving energy as well. Cycling is a brutally hard sport, but it's a sport that needs intellect. And we've got this first significant lull. We saw one after about 4 or 5 laps, and this is potentially an opportunity for somebody to try and go clear. I thought it wouldn't be long, and there's a launch on the left-hand side. Didn't take long. We had about 10 or 15 seconds of relative inaction as they drifted across the road, and the rider starting to go clear now. I think this is from Francesca Morgan Slater from AWOL O'Shea, who's now started to go clear. It was a good punchy move, and again it's about sensing up, but taking opportunities when they present themselves. If you're feeling good, and everybody's all across the road, you've got to take these opportunities. But lots of riders will be minded to do the same thing, but that was brought back very quickly. Yeah,
Sammy Stewart of Das Hansing just on the wheel there. Sammy was a very accomplished crit rider last year, taking a couple of rounds of the Tour Series. There's a real explosion onto the British cycling scene was Sammy Stewart, rewarded with a contract with Cam's Basso UCI team.
And there's another move, so that's another one of those. One of the Tekkers riders going clear. Let's have a look at that. Well, we'll identify that rider as soon as we can, but as they rocket through the finishing straight once more, the clock continues to tick. About 22 minutes into this championship, so approximately a third of the way through. So this is Madeline Leach, my mistake, of the Life Plus Wahoo team. The rebranded team. The team nearly folded at the start of the year, but Life Plus came in and gave them a lifeline. Very important team, been around for several years, and they've got a rider up the road.
Yeah, Maddie Leach, the newly crowned under-23 time trial champion.
So Leach, of course, with that time trialling attributes, which has been brought back pretty quickly there, but that's the first time we've seen her at the front. So many of these riders just happy in the opening stages of the race, just to knock it back a little bit. and often quite a few riders, it can take 5 or 6 laps just to get to the front to actually try something as well.
Yeah, it can be really difficult to make your way up to the front. One of the riders that's just managed to do that is Flora Perkins, sat in third wheel of the Phoenix de Koenig development team. Flora Perkins has had an incredible season thus far, stepping up to the World Tour team on a number of occasions and really doing a number of cracking rides for the World Tour team. So I wouldn't be surprised if she's rewarded with a better contract come next year, but good to see Flora Perkins up there in third wheel.
Yeah, Perkins looking good as we come through for yet another lap. So Leach takes them through. There we go, top left of your screen, 20 minutes of racing. So we are approximately 1/3 of the way through. The two Tackers riders just move up the left-hand side. That's Jenny Hall and Amy Perryman. Back into the top corner and round again. As you can see, that's one of the only real bits of incline again, but you're carrying so much pace these riders will hardly notice it. It is essentially pan flat, save for a few gentle little ripples. But that left-hander, they do carry a fair bit of speed, and back into the back straight again as the concertina effect takes place once more, and as Jo Tindley just starts to move up the inside. So, a bit of a rubbing of shoulders there, a slight little wobble. As another rider just moves through to the front now. It's getting a little, I wouldn't say it's cagey, but the riders are starting to get the measure of each other here, aren't they? Because a no move has started to stick. Most of the big teams in this race riding with real discipline and shutting anything dangerous down. Yeah,
that's right. It seemed like a few riders were just taking a few laps just to settle their nerves and really get in towards the racing, but serious moves have come from multiple riders as everyone's trying to have a go off the front of the bunch. Nothing majorly sticking at the moment, but this is just a real wearing down process, isn't it?
It is. You can just see the front of the peloton to the back is about 150 metres long, and at these sorts of speeds to close that gap can take a very long time. But if you're not on a good day on a circuit race like this, when the pace is high, it's horrible being at the back. You get that whiplash effect, and ultimately there's only so much punishment you can take as you try and chase and get back down again, because as riders are accelerating out of another corner, you're shaving speed off into the corner, and that ultimately means the elastic just snaps.
Yeah, I mean, it's actually a lot harder to ride these races towards the back than it is through the front, because as you say, when you're taking these corners in the front of the bunch, you almost don't need to touch your brakes for a number of occasions, but as you go down the back of the field, they're slamming on and having to re-accelerate out. But Sammy Stewart now is on the front, driving the pace. This is what she's known for. When she puts the power down, it's really hard to hold the wheel.
With it, the rider that went with her she went over the top. So Sammy Stewart, real beautiful cadence there. Look at the way she's turning the pedals, lovely fluidity. And the rider that's trying to bring her back is the rider you were talking about before. That's Flora Perkins, just dragging them back into contention. That's one rider you do not want to let go. But clearly Perkins is feeling good, happy to do that rather than leave it to another team.
Yeah, I mean, it's really down to Flora Perkins at this point in the race, because we've got a rider from Das Hansling, one of the biggest teams in this race. When you look around, there isn't any other teams necessarily that are going to try and bring this one back that are up towards the front. We would look towards the team of Pro Noctis, just coming to the front there in the red jerseys. They weren't present in the front of the bunch at that point in time, so it was down to Flora Perkins to close the gap on her own.
So Perkins in third, Jo Tindley moving up, and also hasn't exactly done anything yet, just floating around is Alex Maurice. There's a bunch, another couple of riders get distance, and Maurice sitting comfortably there in about 9th or 10th place, safely in the wheels. Can see what's happening up in front, but at the same time she can conserve energy. So Maurice, of course I mention her again, you are the director sportif of the team, riding a good race so far, so not too far to the front, just keeping herself in a handy position here to spot anything that goes and try and stay out of any danger as well.
Yeah, that's right. I think it's also important to mention that, you know, for Alex, she's only in her second season of racing.
That's really important, yeah.
You know, really, it's only just over a year ago that she did her first race. So it's been quite a phenomenal season for her, stepping up into the Canyon SRAM team. obviously racing a number of World Tour races. Just of late she was over in Spain racing in Zulia and Vuelta Burgos before coming over for Ride London, so it's been a bit of a whirlwind for Alex
baptism,
Morris.
isn't it? That's
Absolutely,
a real baptism.
real baptism of fire, but one that she has really learned from, really responded well to, and has stepped up week after week, so it's been really quite impressive to see the progress of Alex Morris. But yeah, as we say, she's only a year into her cycling career, so doing some really great stuff.
Yeah, she's got a big engine, a very articulate, intelligent young woman with a bright future, that is for sure. As a team inspired Megan Barker takes a sip from her bidon, making sure she's topped up those fluids. On a night like this, it's really important, although it's only an hour long, you need to be fueled up beforehand. We saw many riders taking gels just before the start, but in an hour with these humid, warm conditions, although the sun has gone in, you do need to make sure you're topped up across the board to make sure you're in optimum shape for the entire duration of the race. Yeah,
I think, if on a night like tonight you didn't take on board any fluids or any energy, then, those latter laps you're really going to suffer and pay the price for that. So probably get some riders cramping towards the end of the race just with how intense it is. But yeah, it's not the same as fueling for a road race, of course, when we're racing over many hours. It is that real high intensity that the riders will be experiencing tonight, and so need that real fast release energy. Don't think there'll be any rice cakes in the pockets tonight.
Definitely not. There's certainly no bulging back pockets to indicate that. There's no musettes at the feed zone. It is travelling light, so one bidon on board. That's one bottle in the bottle cage for the riders today. As the pace just drops off a little bit. We are bang on half distance now as the clock strikes 7 o'clock with half an hour of racing done. We've got another 25 minutes of racing, and once they pass, after 25 minutes more racing, they pass through the finish line and they will be shown 5 laps to go. It's a unique idiosyncrasy of circuit racing. The British Championships are always done this way. Most circuit races are an hour in distance, slightly less for the juniors, around 40 minutes, but for the elite women and the elite men, 55 minutes and 5 laps has been the case for many years. But 26 minutes of racing there to be precise. Back through the finish line again, and I'd estimate we've only got around 45 or 50 riders left in this field now. It's been attritional so far as the pace just backs off a little bit, but they do carry a lot of speed into this corner. I've been really impressed with the way they've been cornering. That's a real wonderful bend, isn't it, to carry a lot of pace into.
Yeah, but as we said, the riders at the front can carry so much speed through, but those riders at the back suffering somewhat as you have to really sprint out of the turns to try and follow the pace of the lead riders. But just again, a little bit of a stalemate, a little slowing in the pace here as everyone checks each other out.
Yeah, there's a lot of furtive glancing around. Lots of riders, as you said. We've seen multiple riders now, multiple different, very classy riders try and attack. The most impressive of which, no doubt, was Katie Archibald. It was a double attack, that first searing move, a seated attack, fully aero, opened up a big gap. She was then caught and then went again. But that just shows how difficult I think it is going to be to split this group because of the pace that they're carrying into the corners. I think it is going to be hard to split this one. I'm not saying it won't split, but it's certainly not a super technical criterium, so it has its own set of difficulties here, isn't it? So riders are going to have to really think about how they race this one, aren't they?
Yeah, they are, and I think this is where we could really see the advantage of those riders that have a number of teammates in the race today. So as you mentioned at the beginning, having team tactics coming into play, and looks like we've got a move. Pronoctus on the attack.
Pronoctus just winding up on the left-hand side. Have opened up a little bit of a move, carrying a lot of pace. They're doing well in excess of 50 kilometres an hour in this tailwind section. Straight into the corner. I don't think the riders are braking. They're covering the brakes, but hardly even feathering them at all. But the riders behind on the wheels will have to brake, and that's when things start to thin out. So it's Amy Gornall on the front, flying. She was very active in the Criterium Championships last year. An exceptionally talented rider, come from good stocks, born in Lancashire. And I know very well, raced with her dad back in the day. It's a long time ago. Won't go into any more details about that, but Gornall comes from a real cycling heritage of a family. But looking good on the front. but they have got numbers. That's one of the team. Pro Knox, I think it's fair to say, well, they have the most riders in this field, so they've got the resource to try and make this consistently hard. I don't think, especially if they're just protecting Joe Tindley, what Tindley won't want is this ebb and flow all the time. She'd rather it was hard all the time. That's the kind of race I think she'd prefer.
Yeah, I mean, judging from how Joe Tindley has ridden these races in the past, obviously we saw that incredible solo win that she took back in 2021 on her home roads of Lincoln, and I'm sure she would love to be able to repeat that feat again today. But as we mentioned at the top of the show, that we haven't had any of the Tour Series races this year. We've really been lacking in criterium, so basically everyone's kind of coming into this not really knowing what shape the other riders are in when it comes to crit racing. Of course, we've had a number of road races and the domestic race scene has been very competitive this year, but with criterium races it's a very different kettle of fish.
It certainly is. I think that's why we're seeing such an interesting shape and an interesting this race is unfolded in a really intriguing way. There's several riders that have certainly tested the water with some big, quite emphatic attacks, but none have stuck. And there's also a lot of riders looking around, so they're clearly weighing each other up, because the form, I wouldn't say it's totally unknown, but because road racing says a lot about a ride, but it doesn't necessarily inform how a rider's going to ride a criterium, and that's the thing. This is a completely and utterly different discipline. The only similarity really is they're on bikes, but in terms of an effort profile, and the type of terrain that favours a different sort of ride, it really is a discipline that you can specialise in and be a great road racer, but just cannot get to grips with a criterium. It's as simple as that, isn't it?
Yeah, it certainly is, and particularly for many of these women that are racing over on the continent, they'll be racing over 140, 160 kilometres, week in, week out. So when you have just over an hour worth of racing, that's the last 40 k's of a race. It's a very different skill set and a very different, as you say, kind of power profile that the riders will need to be performing at a top level in the road racing. And I'm sure we'll see a number of these riders tackling the road race on Sunday, and looking to that, it will be a very different prospect for them.
It certainly will. Very interesting. The pace looks like the wind's maybe just dropped ever such a little bit, and when the pace drops you can see the peloton just spreads out a little bit, and you get what's called the washing machine effect as Tindley just drops in to second wheel, just around that corner again, just keeping herself out of trouble. You get the sense that she might want to try something here, moving into second wheel rather than dropping back a bit, but that's not necessarily the place to go. Best way is just to lay off the wheel and attack from the back, but yeah, quite a cagey at last few laps. No attacks in the last 5 or 10 minutes.
Yeah, it's been somewhat noticeable that Joe Tindley hasn't been up towards the front. We would expect to have seen a bit more from her as Sammy Stewart lights up the afterburners, closely followed by Katie Archibald. Now, I just noticed that Katie had just started to move back up through the bunch. She was almost somewhat invisible after her early attack, and just timed it perfectly to come to the front just as Sammy Stewart Das Hansling puts on the pressure. Now we're going racing.
They certainly are. Just look at the way that Katie Archibald is on a bike, the way she gets low. She's so strong, but importantly she's ridiculously aerodynamic and is really cognizant of the fact that you want to deliver that power, be as comfortable as you can as well, but be aero. And what a lethal combination it is. Look at the gaps that are opening up now. Sammy Stewart couldn't hold the wheel. She flicks the elbow in desperation, and the gap is starting to open up. The multiple Olympic and world champion is moving clear. Look at the face here of Archibald. This is sensational stuff. The second big attack of the night for her, and she's opened up a big gap.
Yeah, she has indeed. Just look at the gap on the road in just a few hundred metres that she's been able to open up. We saw that incredible attack from her earlier on. It didn't quite work. She went back into the bunch, recovered, didn't cop any wind. We didn't see her for a good few laps, and then recovered enough to launch this really stinging attack.
This is absolutely wonderful stuff. Now what is going to happen behind? Well, they need to combine to try and bring her back, because this is dangerous. We've still got a lot of racing to go, remember. It's around 7 minutes past 7 now. At around 25 past the hour just gone, they will see 5 laps to go, but Archibald now is out of sight. The beautiful thing about these shorter sections, that little effectively the large chicane we've got here, is that briefly she's out of sight, but she won't be out of mind. But I tell you what, Danny, this is incredible. She's opened up about 50 or 60 metres in around 40 seconds. That is mightily impressive.
It's incredibly impressive, and this is the point now that the bunch really need to get themselves organised. There needs to be a concerted chase, because it's quite obvious that if one or two riders try to attack on their own, they're not going to have the power to close down on Katie Archibald. Just the way that she's been able to open up that gap and just coming through now to lap a load of riders here.
And Archibald, look at this. She's almost got the entire finishing straight to herself. I can tell you what, that isn't a smile, that is a grimace. Now they need to move these riders clear, but out of respect they are giving her that little bit of space, and riders that get lapped will be removed from the race. So that attack in one lap, she's taken, we haven't got the clock on it, but she's got at least 5 or 6 seconds, but in a city centre race, in a circuit race, that's a considerable distance. And now she can ride in more of a linear fashion now, can't she? It's all about getting into the zone and trying to ride for the next 25 minutes as hard as she can. But that is something that she certainly can do, isn't it?
Oh, this is what Katie Archibald does best, you know, riding extremely hard for a relatively short period of time. And yeah, if I was in that bunch right now, the alarm bells would definitely be ringing here. As I say, the bunch really need to sort out what is the plan, how are we going to bring back this rider, because it can't just be left down to one or two riders, because there is no other rider in this bunch that's going to be able to match the power of Katie Archibald.
But just look at how she corners as well. You know, this is although there are similarities in circuit racing and on track, you don't corner, you don't have brakes. It's very, very different. But she's totally and utterly dialed here. And she, on paper, pound for pound, has got one of the biggest engines here. But when you combine that with the technique that she has as well, that determination, that craft, that skill, she's basically a weapon on wheels here. It's so impressive to see. She's been away for 2 laps now, and the bunch are out of sight. Here they are, just coming into view. So the double Olympic champion, the 4 times world champion, so far has torn a big gap between her and herself. And look at behind, there's no real organisation at all, and that surprises me a little bit here. Yeah,
it looked like the impetus had really come out, but Megan Barker now, team inspired, onto the front. She was also one of the riders that was part of that team pursuit squad that won the World Cup back in Milton in April. So she's got a very similar power profile to Katie Archibald. She will obviously know Katie extremely well, riding with her on the track, and knows that this is not a rider that you want to give much distance to.
Well, there you go, 16.3 seconds, and I believe you me, on a circuit this small, 16 seconds is a long way. And if she continues to ride at the rate she is at the moment, and there's no real organised chase behind, she's putting herself in the frame for a gold medal. We did ask that question. 6th place in the individual time trial. We thought maybe she could have done a little bit better than that. We're not too sure, but tonight she's absolutely on fire. Let's look at a couple of riders there in the pits. So game over for a few riders who've been lapped, but certainly not game over for Katie Archibald, who got a great shot from the rear. Look at that. She's only got a couple of sprockets left. Just shows how quick she is going. She's eating up this tarmac here in Redcar.
She is, and just look at the position that she's able to get into on the bike. It's really quite impressive. But not only that, is she able to adopt this aerodynamic position, the power that she's able to put through the pedals in such a position. I mean, it beggars belief at times, doesn't it?
It certainly does. Well, that's why she's one of the best in the world at this sort of thing. Now she's 2 straights in front. It might be very shortly 3 straights in front. And the team that had been put on the front to do the chasing are the Pro Noctis team. Oh, there's a crash. Archibald has crashed. She's come down, and that lead is going to be completely wiped out. A chain has come off. We didn't see the crash, but she came off on the corner here. Disaster has struck for Katie Archibald after looking like she was running away with the championships, and now she's been caught, and it is as you were. Katie Archibald, well, let's have a look at this again. Comes into this corner quite clearly, just a little bit too hot. The back wheel goes and she lays it down. Just hope she's okay. That's a nasty fall there.
God, that was a horrible crash for Katie Archibald, but obviously she's back up on her feet and seems relatively unscathed, but she'll be cursing herself at that error coming into the corner. But this is one of the dangers of criterium racing, isn't it? You're riding on such a fine line on every corner, every turn, trying to take it as fast as you possibly can, and well, you don't know the limits until you go over them.
Yeah, she was really pushing. You tell every single corner that we saw her on before then, she was really pushing it. aggressive into the bends, but on that particular occasion, it's a dry surface. I mean, as gifted, as talented, as determined as Katie Archibald is, sometimes it's just rider error. As you said, she's completely committed, and quite often we're looking at, especially on a circuit like this, the speeds that they're carrying, the margins are narrow, and there's not much between winning and actually laying it down, and that happened on this occasion. So sadly for Archibald now, it looks like she looks okay, she's scuffed, her pride will be dented. She'll live to fight another day, but very unfortunate for her.
Yeah, I mean, it's really unfortunate for her. It's unfortunate for the race. Obviously, she's taken some paint off there, probably both the bike and her body. But the interesting thing now to consider also is that obviously the riders will have passed Katie Archibald when she was on the side of the road, but there may be the odd rider in this group that didn't see Katie Archibald on the side of the road. You know, if you're on the other side of the bunch,
quite
sometimes
possibly.
you just don't realise that somebody's gone down, and so if they don't realise that Katie Archibald is no longer part of this race, they keep riding thinking that they're riding for second at the moment. So this is where conversations in the bunch need to happen so that everyone is aware there. But yeah, you can see that she looks all right. She's obviously extremely annoyed with herself, was in a winning position there.
Yeah, that was Josie Knight, another one of the team, one of the favourites for this race, or a rider that we were talking about, who was also out of the race, unfortunately, not having a good night. A big hug there. But I think more than anything, there's some skin that's gone. She'll reflect on that and learn from it, but it also can be a little bit of a dent to your pride laying it down, especially when, okay, she had such a good chance of taking it. But that, I think, writ large there was the fact that she is a rider who just gives it everything. That was 100% commitment, and it's just tipped it over. But that just shows how much she wanted this win. But it's certainly not going to be tonight, maybe for the future.
Yeah, as you say, 100% commitment, but that's what it takes to win, and unfortunately sometimes you just go a little bit too far over the limit, and that was a result for Katie Archibald. So as we say, it looks like she's all well, doesn't look like she's too injured. Unfortunately won't take any further.
There's a load of riders down. Oh, there's a touch of wheels there, and half of the field has gone down here in Redcar. I do hope that everybody is okay. That is an absolutely catastrophic crash, the likes of which we just do not want to see. But there was a little bit of a momentary lapse. It looked like there, Danny, somebody just touched the wheel, and the ripple effect caused everybody to go down. Well, let's just hope people pick themselves up. That was absolutely awful. Most people are getting up, but there's one or two riders down on the circuit.
That's Emma Jeffers, one of the big favourites for today. Looked like one of the first riders to go down, just running to try and get a bite. The fortunate thing for a number of these riders is that they have crashed just by the pit lane. Just getting a replay of that now.
Let's have a little look at what happened here. Well, there was a little bit of a touch. Oh, it was Emma Jeffers just caught the wheel of Joe Tindley and went down first very heavily, and the riders just behind her there's nothing they could do about it. That domino effect that we see in crashes, a couple of riders managing to shave a bit of speed off, but again, that's just the attritional nature of criterium races. It's one of the biggest crashes I've ever seen in the national championships, but brutally, but it is racing. They might actually neutralise things here, because this is no real surprise. They're neutralising the race because there are a couple of riders still lying on the ground and injured. Actually, a couple of riders are still down here, so awful scenes here. But the right thing has been done, and the race temporarily has been neutralised. It's of primacy in a situation like this is the health and safety of the riders that are down. It's something we do not want to see, but we can just wish our best to the two riders that are down on the ground at the moment. So, well, that was awful, absolutely awful. Well, I'm going to be really honest with you here, Danny. This isn't something that we see very often at all. Firstly, a crash of such size, and secondly, a race being stopped. But the rider on the ground needs some medical attention, and that is what is happening at the moment. So it's all about her health and safety and her well-being.
Yeah, of course, we obviously won't speculate as to any of the injuries of the riders. Of course, we send all of them our best wishes, and we hope that everyone is okay from this race. But yeah, I wonder, you know, as you say, we haven't seen a situation like this for a long time, and there was, of course, a number of riders that had been dropped from this front group here, which is potentially an opportunity for them now to be back within the bike race. We saw, you know, shortly after the crash there, just coming into the home straight, it looked like a number of riders were trying to really then put the pressure on almost taken advantage of the chaos that had happened behind them, but everyone's stopped now. And this is another thing for the riders to try and deal with, isn't it? They've just been going absolutely full gas now for around 45 minutes, and now they're having to stand still and their legs will absolutely seize up. This is like the worst cafe stop you've ever had.
It is, yeah, it's an interesting way of putting it. It is, it's again, it opens the door again to several riders who come down. We are going to see that again. There was just a little touch of wheels. It was only innocuous, and Jeff has moved across and just caught the back wheel of Tindley. And as you know, and as I know, once you catch the back wheel of somebody, 99.999% of the time there's no coming back from it. It's just the laws of physics that bring you down. It's very hard to bring it back from that point, isn't it?
Yeah, it is very hard, and then obviously for the riders that are behind, there's absolutely nowhere to go, and so this is why we see such mass pile-ups. But it looked like most of the riders were able to immediately jump up and go and either immediately get back onto their bike or go into the pits and get another bike. They obviously wanted to still participate in this race, so it looked like a number of the riders were still good to go despite that horrendous crash.
Well, the crash happened about 45 minutes into the race. It is a race of 55 minutes and 5 laps. We'll keep you posted on what's going to happen next. To several riders, as well as receiving medical attention, there are a couple of riders still on the ground, but other riders getting the opportunity, and one of them is Katie Archibald. She's back on her bike because she didn't actually lose a full lap. If she rode round the circuit and ended up back, she has got, well, this is going to be quite interesting here, because she left the circuit, maybe she did lose a lap. Well, we'll see. That's not for us to decide, because a lot has happened. I don't think I've seen quite as an eventful as a criterium as I have in a long time, Danny. But from what we can see, it does look as if she's trying to get another chance. She's readying her bike and might jump back in, but that remains to be seen whether she's allowed to continue because of that lap rule. But we won't speculate much further on that one. So the race continuing to be neutralised.
Certainly a busy time for the mechanics as well, isn't it? Trying to make sure that everyone's bike is ready and good to go.
Do the lap, that's it. She's got to do the extra lap. I think she lost a lap, and if she does this lap now and gets back to the back before they start, that should mean that she can actually restart the race. To be honest with you, technically it's right, but it's utterly unprecedented, because I cannot remember a criterium in all my Tour Series experience, circuit race experience, even when I was riding, where we've actually restarted it, because I haven't seen a crash so large. So what we're seeing now is quite unusual, but clearly Katie's been instructed to do another lap to bring her back on to the same amount of laps as everybody else, and it looks like she might get another bite at the cherry.
Wow, this is quite bizarre, isn't it?
Lots to unpick when this race is finally over, and we do have a national champion. But it is going to be a short race, because they've done 45 minutes of racing. When they do restart, and again, we might just get as much information as you when they ultimately do restart the race. It does look like that is going to happen, but as you can see, there is still a rider being tended to on the ground here, and that is what is the most important thing. And the ambulance is now on the circuit, so the race certainly won't recommence until this young woman is looked after and is receiving the care that she needs.
Katie Archibald will just be using that lap to regroup and get her mindset right again, won't she? What an evening for Katie Archibald to be off the front in a winning position there. Crashes, she's out the race, and then due to the unfortunate circumstances, she's been given another lifeline to jump back in. It's as you say, unprecedented, isn't it?
Yeah, never quite seen anything like this. So if you're just joining us, this is the British Elite Women's National Circuit Race Championships. We're up in Redcar in North Yorkshire. We're by the sea, and the race distance was 55 minutes and 5 laps, but we've had a couple of crashes. Katie Archibald, the double Olympic champion, on the right hand side there, and I think she's been told to stop, so she's taking a place on the line. That is a commissaire, so it looks like she is going to be allowed to start. So
just asking the commissaire there, is she allowed to restart?
Because we've just never seen anything like it. She left the circuit as well, didn't she? I don't know whether that's technically, or she's taken a fair bit of skin off. She's got a bloody knee there. So she's just double checking her bike. So it looks to me as if she's just double and triple checking her machine. It looks like, I think she was actually explaining that she crashed, missed a lap, but has now ridden a lap to make it back. I think a little bit of lip reading and a little bit of audio, the little bit of audio that was indeed discernible, that's what I think has happened. So a lot to talk about once this race does recommence. So battled, bloodied and scarred, but certainly not unbowed, and she is going to be given another chance. Tears on the saddle as well as she rejoins the reduced peloton, and then meanwhile the rider who is still prone on the ground is going to be into the ambulance very shortly.
A few riders just putting their jackets on there, so it's obviously they've been riding incredibly hard over the last 45 minutes, and they will have obviously been getting a bit of a sweat on, and so when you stop you can actually get quite cold. Your body temperature drops relatively quickly, particularly as you say there is a bit of a breeze on the seafront, so yeah, it's quite difficult there for the riders to stay warm, particularly after, you know, they've been racing so hard for, as we say, around 45 minutes now, but some of the riders still in good spirits, which is good to see.
Yeah, it looks like a lot of them are discussing the crash, because it took out, I would say, at the time, at the size of the group was probably 50 or so riders, I'd say it took out half, or maybe just under. At the worst, about a third, but it was a big crash. But most riders have thankfully got back up again and will restart the race. So we should be back up and running very shortly. But when we do have crashes in criteriums and road races, the circuit will be closed if an ambulance actually makes its way on. And what we have had in the past is criteriums halted, because remember the public needs an ambulance as well. So of course it's the public health and safety, the health and safety of the riders is always paramount. It is from time to time a sport with risk, and that's what the riders know when they go into it, and particularly circuit racing as well. It's fast, it's furious, it's technical, and you don't even need to be with other riders to fall off. We saw Katie Archibald, it was just purely rider error. It was that tyre grip trade-off, lost the back wheel into that left-hander. As we'd see a couple of dogs oblivious to the criterion racing going on. And a shot out into the sea here. There's a few of the male riders who will be up and racing shortly as well. The men's elite race will take place after the women's race at approximately 8 o'clock. There may be a short delay given what's happened here. And I'm wondering what commissaires will do in terms of actually restarting the race, whether there will be 15 minutes and 5 laps or 10 minutes and 5 laps. It's probably going to be something along those lines, I'd imagine, because they won't re-ride the whole race. That's just, but I'd imagine they will just start it and do 10 minutes of racing and do 5 laps. That's what I think they might. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously, it won't be the whole race that the riders will get to do, and they may even do another neutralised lap. Sometimes that's the case when it's been stopped. But yeah, I think we're just going to have to wait and see a bit, aren't we? And this is something that the riders all have to deal with. Seeing Sophie Thackeray there look like one of the riders that been impacted by that crash.
Well, I've just looked at my phone, and Ned Bolton, a colleague of ours, is on site. He's just sent me a message. It's actually at about 7 o'clock started to rain slightly. So I'm wondering, when there's a few spots of rain, there was a little bit of moisture, and that's one of the factors contributing to Kate Archibald's crash there, which could be the case. Because once you're away, she's been away for a few laps, you generally get it dialed and you take each corner exactly the same. But when moisture's thrown into the mix, you're not aware of it. That could have been the issue there. So. rider that's down is currently receiving some attention to her arm. I believe her arm is being splintered at the moment, which is a safe thing to do rather than manoeuvre this young lady into the ambulance. And that is more important than any sport. Meanwhile, another distraction is we've got some more dog action. There are dogs everywhere. Is that dog called Dexter? Looks like he's got a label or a name tag on his harness there. It's a lot of dogs panting in the heat. Another dog here. That's a Labrador, quite keen, but being held very tightly on the leash there by its owner. Good technique. And Jack Russell here. Some hairy legs. There it is, emerging again with a very fetching purple harness.
Maybe we could have a dog race.
Maybe we could have a dog race. Do you have a dog?
I don't have a dog, but if I did have a dog, I'd let it race.
Would you? Just sort of not greyhound racing. Oh, there we go. Here we go. There's the young lady who's receiving attention there. Her arm has indeed been splintered. She's got the treatment that she needed. So they just clearly wanted to do that in the most ideal position.
Good to see that everybody is up and relatively okay. Of course, it was quite a major crash there, and I'm sure that there's going to be a lot of riders that are feeling pretty battered and pretty bruised. Yeah, we won't speculate as to the extent of people's injuries, but of course, you know, the main thing is that we see that everyone is up and about and relatively okay. So that's the good news, I guess.
No, definitely.
See a few riders there just riding up and down the home straight just to try and keep themselves warmed up, because as we say, they've been riding full gas really for 45 minutes, and when you stop for a good sort of 10-15 minutes or so, your legs can really seize up. So a few riders just taking the opportunity to ride up and down.
Yeah, as you say, it can drop off quite quickly. Even on a balmy evening, and these riders only buzzing around and riding in very, very thin, almost gossamer thin skin suits, so that your body heat is lost very, very quickly indeed. So all it needs is a bit of a cool breeze, and you really start to lose that heat. So the crowd wait, and soon the race will recommence. The riders, a couple of people on the other side of the circuit, completely unaware of what has gone on. Certainly one of the most eventful circuit race championships I've ever seen, but thank goodness most of the riders are back up and are indeed okay. It is amazing how resilient these riders are, that they know that it's a sport that does have its risk, but nonetheless they get involved. I've been informed that was Steven Seagal, and I think that's just a bad pun. So surveying the scene on this beautiful seaside town on the Yorkshire coast. It's been the place or location that's seen a fair bit of action in the past. We had the start of stage 4 of the Tour of Britain here last year. And of course we've got the road races on Sunday, but I remember many years ago, probably upwards of 30 years ago, when things were in black and white. I actually raced here as well in this beautiful seaside town. And of course North Yorkshire, the location for just absolutely a stunning national park of North Yorkshire, off inland of course. Well, there he is. He's just seen himself on the Lime stream. I hope he's done a screen grab, or if he flicks the top of the screen and does screen record, he can record these images and then send them to his grandchildren. Absolutely wonderful scenes here from Redcar. So please do forgive us as we get ourselves through. So there's a pizza delivery going on. But here we go. A round of applause from the assembled crowd. A wonderful crowd. In all seriousness, we'll have a little bit light-hearted there, but thank goodness that young lady has got her the attention she needed and was given a round of applause by the crowd, because cycling's a tough sport, and we've all laid it down on a number of occasions, and it comes past and parcel. It's something we don't ever want to see, but it is part of road cycling, isn't it? And track cycling. Cycling has its risks, and yet they still come out and entertain us and try to make themselves better. But it's part of it, isn't it?
Unfortunately, yes, crashing is part of cycling, and if you compete in cycle racing for a number of years, then you probably will have hit the tarmac on a few occasions. So yeah, unfortunately it is part of the sport, but as we say, we're just happy to see that everyone seems to be relatively okay. Not everyone will continue to participate in this race. Just seeing Katie Archibald there. I'm not sure what the news is as to whether she can or can't participate.
It looks like it's a no. There's a rueful sigh there. I think she's been told that she can't. I think
it was worth a shot, wasn't it?
It was. I mean, why not? I mean, but it was a little bit unusual. I think the fact she'd maybe left the circuit, and maybe it might have been she might have actually lost a couple of laps. I'm not too sure, but clearly she hasn't been allowed to start again, which is a big shame. But I completely understand it. But as you say, why not try?
It was worth a bash, wasn't it? But I think, like, if you think about it, you know, like Katie Archibald crashes, she finishes her race, she leaves, and then if she's able to participate, it looks like she's just got the news there that she wasn't able.
Yeah. The rules are the rules, aren't they? Whether you're a four-time Olympic champion, a double Olympic champion and four-time world champion, the rules are there for everybody. But we would have loved to have seen her get another chance, but it has to be within the rules, and that's fair enough. So I think she's taken that well. And in the next few minutes, we will recommence the British Championships, 2023 Championships. Who will run out the winner? And what will be a very short denouement of today's race. We estimate, although we're yet to find out exact information, that we'll probably have around 15 minutes of racing, which will take us into the men's event afterwards. So those medals and those bands still to be decided.
Sarah Story there, just on the side, giving some advice.
I was just saying we don't know. I was saying who the chief.
Dame Sarah Story has, over the last few years, has had her own team. Story Racing, of course. Still so strong. And a real inspiration. I mean, she's built that team around her. She still races for the team, but it's a wonderful stepping stone squad, isn't it? We've seen some real talent come through that team for the last 5 or 6, 7 years, haven't we?
Yeah, I mean, I think Katie Archibald herself was riding for Story Racing, but yeah, good to see that Dame Sarah Story on the side of the road there, supporting her riders and eyeing up some of the competition for Sunday's road race, where we will see her in action.
Indeed. So, looks like things have settled down. Lots of discussions going on in the pit lane there between team mechanics and team managers, and that's the place where that's where the location where the comms takes place. It's something we haven't really touched upon, and maybe for a moment we can. Is that no radios in criterium racing at all. Of course, riders can talk to each other within the peloton, but on a circuit like this, that's very difficult. And basically, any instructions are old school yelled like on a football pitch from the side of the road in the pit area, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. You know, some of the teams will use like a whiteboard or something like that to be able to communicate.
Well, we're hearing word that we're going to have a 10-lap restart, which would actually make a little bit of sense. So roughly, so that will give us 20 minutes of racing, actually. No, sorry, 12 minutes of racing. Given the lap times that you kindly furnished us with earlier on, Danny. So the ambulance now making its way away from the circuit, and they do a wonderful, such an important job. And a race cannot be held unless this sort of thing is organised in the background. The races will not get off the ground, road races included. They have to have medical support in place should the worst happen. And we still haven't got the identity of that young lady, because she was from the O'Shea team, but now she'll be off to hospital to get that treated. But the race will continue, so we understand, just 10 laps of racing. So this is going to be a particularly interesting proposition, isn't it? It's going to be explosive. The riders have now been slowly cooling down the muscles stiffening up just that little bit,
Yeah.
and there's very little you can do about that, is there?
Yeah, there is. I mean, we have seen a few of the riders just riding up and down the finish straight there. The only thing with that is that now they're starting at the back of the bunch. Obviously, it's a somewhat reduced bunch to what we started with, but there are a number of riders that were dropped that have now got themselves back into contention here due to the unfortunate circumstances that we found ourselves in.
Well, there we go. So a second bite of the cherry for several riders here. But on a crash that big, we've seen road races neutralised in the past, especially when there's an enormous crash. And one of the reasons that some road races are stopped as well is because of the medical attention. If the medical assistant in the location is tied up, they cannot run the race, because if there's another incident, that it's just basically to make sure that medical support and proper medical support is in place. So that's another reason quite often why races are temporarily halted.
Yeah, I mean, I've been sat on the side of a road for a good hour or so whilst we've waited for extra medical backup to come, because as you say, in the road racing, if there isn't an ambulance that's following the race, then or multiple ambulances, it cannot happen. And all of these procedures are put in place for the safety of the riders and just to make sure that we can have as safe a race as possible that's enjoyable for everyone.
Well, I think that trumpet could herald the start of 10 laps of racing. A nice retro Reynolds cap on his head there from that gentleman. And maybe we'll get a little trumpet with a lap to go rather than the bell. I must remind you viewers at home that this is completely an unofficial trumpet. You've got to smile, haven't you? The gentleman there providing cycling is full of characters, many of whom are, of course, in this field. These hardy warriors on wheels. 10 more laps, it is confirmed. And the national champion for the elite women's in the circuit race will be crowned in 10 laps time. In fact, 9 and a bit.
Yeah, looks like we're getting a neutralised lap to start with, as we did at the beginning of the race. Gives everybody the opportunity to shake the legs out a little bit, just settle the nerves, get their minds back on the task in hand of trying to bring home that stripy jersey.
Indeed, you're quite right. It's another sighting lap. So a few nervous riders here and a drastically reduced field. I would estimate maybe 50 riders there. So we started off with 70. And a couple of the reserves were actually used. So we had a full field of 70 riders at the start. And we have these slightly smaller fields in circuit racing. The road races on Sunday, the men's is 180, over 80 riders for the women's. So slightly bigger out on the road. But for these crits, you can't have too big a field. It just doesn't work, does it? And
No.
It's not safe as well.
No, definitely not. So it's a much more selective field. So yeah, as you say, only 70 riders allowed to start. But I mean, that's enough on a course like this, isn't it?
So far back of the circuit now. Concentration of these riders.
Interesting to see that Frankie Hall of Loughborough Lightning has made her way onto the front row. We saw her at the beginning of this race really lighting things up in the opening laps. Millie Cousins now, Phoenix de Koenig, just coming to the front. I wonder if we're going to see someone light it up from the off, taking no chances.
Emily Cousins, as you say, rides for the World Tour team, and you do wonder, as you say, with the way she's been performing, Flora Perkins might be joining her on the World Tour team. But you'd imagine, although they certainly would like to win this race individually, they certainly will be working as a collective unit. A small pairing, of course, both in the same kit, or very similar kit, just a couple of different markings there distinguishing the World Tour team from the development team. As the motorbike continues to just accelerate away from the riders, we are off. 10 laps to go now, so this is going to be short. It's going to be around 14 minutes or so. It's essentially a 10-lap race. I'd estimate we've got about 50 riders left in the field. And another acceleration off the front. Francesca Hall is like a Duracell bunny today, and she's already moving clear.
Yeah, we could see it was a writing was on the wall, wasn't it? As soon as Frankie Hall came to the front in the neutralised section, we kind of knew that she was going to go on the offensive as soon as the, well, we didn't have a flag that dropped, did we? But as soon as the motorbike pulled away to signify that they are going racing again.
You know, Sammy Stewart that brought her back, and on the wheel there, Perkins as well, seeing the blue jersey of de Koenig on that Canyon bike. So nobody yet has managed to move clear, but this is going to be an interesting race. It could be quite a tactical one here, but that could, if it starts to get tactical and the pace starts to drop off, that opens the door for riders to go clear. But this is going to be very, very nervous indeed. It certainly is. I can't remember anything quite like it. So particularly nuanced, this one, and this could make these last 9 laps or so exceptionally open. I think there's probably, some riders would be happy to have a second chance, but I reckon there's one of maybe 15 riders could take this today. This is really interesting, isn't it? So difficult to call.
It is, because obviously all of the riders have been racing really aggressive for, sort of 40-45 minutes, 9 laps to go now, but it's it's a very different prospect to how we would have started today, because they've all had a bit of a rest, and then suddenly we've got 10 laps which are going to decide the home of the national champs jersey for this criterium race. It's a very different prospect to anything we've ever seen before.
Yeah, it certainly is. Millie Cousins moves into second wheel. Still on the front is Francesca Hall of Loughborough Lightning. Next time through it will be 8 laps to go. I'm glad there's the countdown on the board for us, so we know when to call the final finish here, and these riders will keep an eye on the scoreboard or on the board on the left hand side, giving the lap countdown, because again I'll just underline the fact that you do need to pay attention to the laps to go. It's very easy to get caught up in the racing, and we've seen it before at the top level. Riders think they've won, and then the bell goes. So that's something we don't often talk about, but you have to keep a keen eye on how many laps to go, because it is very easy to just caught up in something, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, if Katie Archibald was feeling a little bit embarrassed about her crash, then imagine celebrating with a lap to go. That would be awful, wouldn't it? But yeah, as you say, it's really a case of making sure that you stay really focused and really concentrating on the race in hand.
Well, meanwhile, we are on the coast, of course. The RNLI just been taken out, the lifeboat. It's not very often you see that in a British Circuit Race Championships. I thought you'd be joined by a man on a scooter, but thankfully they weren't. Back to the racing, and we are thundering down at the finishing straight. And again, it is the irrepressible Francesca Hall on the front. She's ridden a super aggressive race today, that is for sure. So 8 laps to go now, and a little bit of a split has occurred there. One of the teams I haven't seen too far near the front, and they're down in about 15th or 20th place of the squad of the champion from back in 2021 at Joe Tinley. That's the Pro Noctis team, noticeable by their absence at the front here.
Yeah, it is. We're often used to seeing the Pro Noctis squad, those red jerseys all being up to the front and riding really aggressively, but as you say, it's kind of noticeable by their absence this evening. It is the likes of Frankie Hall, the pairing from Phoenix de Koenig of Millie Cousins and Flora Perkins, and essentially the whole of the Das Hansling squad there in the blue helmets that have been up to the front and really making the race.
Yeah, meanwhile, the lifeboat heads out to do what it needs to do at speed. So we've seen the ambulance in the mix today. The emergency services, of course, they never stop. So all back together. It's a little bit of an attack. Still Francesca Hall on the front, happy to do the pacemaking here. She's clearly riding with a lot of confidence, otherwise she certainly wouldn't be up the front. But also, she's giving these riders an opportunity to rest behind, and the longer this goes on, the more it's going to suit the riders that might want to go for a sprint rather than a long one. But there is an attack on at the right hand side, or somebody moving up. There was Amy Gornall on the right hand side for Pro Noctis, trying to open up a little bit of a gap.
Must have been listening to us, calling them to the front. As we say, we haven't seen too much of them, but Amy Gornall is one of the riders from the Pro Noctis squad that we have seen on the front a number of the times, railing it through that first corner that she's just about to take now.
Yeah, good riding here by the Pro Noctis team. And again, I think the call has gone out. Maybe the pace wasn't quite hot enough. They want to keep it. If Joe Tinley wants to repeat that win of 2021, as you were talking about earlier on, Danny, on home soil, when we had that very late national championships, it was almost like a nocturne, wasn't it? It was a similar time of day, but there wasn't a lot of daylight. It was a spectacular solo victory. She'd dearly love to do it again, and she's got a strong team around her. At the moment, Gornall happy to set the tempo at the front. So as the clock continues to tick and the laps continue to go down, as do the opportunity to try and break this group up, as we were talking about before that catastrophic crash in the middle of the bunch. About 45 minutes in, we've essentially restarted, and it's also hard for a lot of riders who've been focused to actually get back to where they were before from a psychological perspective as well, because you go through such a lot of adrenaline, you hype yourself up, and then to restart after 10 minutes of just sitting on your bike and go again is quite an interesting proposition, and something that not many riders will have ever experienced before either.
Yeah, well, I would imagine that most of the riders wouldn't have experienced something like this before, but you know, it's days like today and situations like this where you really test your mental strength, and to be a big champion, you need to have it. You need to have it in the head as well as the legs. So yeah, we'll see who comes out on top and who is able to deal with this type of situation and see it as an opportunity as opposed to a negative circumstance.
Indeed. Well, it's Greenwood in second wheel at the moment, still going or winding this pace up at the front. We've seen her do this on numerous occasions in the past. She's got a big engine, happy to keep that pace high. And when the pace is high at the front, it just makes it that little bit more difficult to attack off this sort of speed. And a teammate just on the left-hand side, well, the right-hand side as we look at it, is now about 15th back, but this is getting very cagey. Next time through, it will only be 5 laps to go. So this is becoming very tactical. And some of the riders with those real fast twitch muscles in this field will be liking this, won't they? They'll be more than happy for it to go to a sprint. I mean, although it's difficult to pick out every single rider here, of the riders that we know are in this field who've got a good sprint, who would you pick out if it was going to stay all together for a bunch sprint?
Well, we're looking at the moment towards the riders, I think, from Das Hansen. You can see Monica Greenwood on the front here, just setting the pace. Emma Jeffers just behind her. You can see she was second in this race last year. Remember, we spoke about her taking that second place on junior gearing. Both of those two have been very impressive in races over in Belgium. And then also over to the left-hand side of her screen is Sophie Lewis, another rider with an incredibly fast finish. 5 laps to go now. The riders will see that card. But also we can see there the young junior, Kat Ferguson, in the green, just in around 6th position there, really up towards the front. That could be another turnout for the books, having a very successful junior in this race.
Indeed. As you said, she's excelled this year. Such a talent, but it is still all together. And also I did notice, I think it's Emma Jeffers, sat in third wheel at the moment. She's got quite a nasty scrape to her leg as well. So some of the, you can just see Jeffers there. She's got a bloody knee and some skin off on her shin. And that's going to hurt tomorrow, but quite often these riders can get through that. It's not until a little bit after the race, when the adrenaline has sort of ebbed away, that you actually start to feel these pains. So it is surprising, isn't it, how much these riders can actually tolerate. They've lost a lot of skin, they're bleeding, but they can still perform pretty much optimally. It's amazing, really, isn't it?
Yeah, and as you say, it's the adrenaline that takes over. Of course, being sat on the side of the road for 15 minutes definitely wouldn't have helped, but it was Emma Jeffers was the first rider to go down there, so she had a lot of riders landing on top of her as well. So as you say, she'll probably be sore tomorrow, but she'll put that out of her mind now, because there is a national championships to contend.
Yeah, well, their team are riding exceptionally well. Das Handling. We've got 3 riders there just sat behind. Big acceleration on the front here as we head back through. Next time through, and this tailwind finish here in Redcar. 4 laps to go. We will see who is going to be crowned the elite national circuit race champion for women. It's been an interesting race, an intriguing race. Thrills and spills aplenty. And we're now coming into the last couple of minutes of racing. So with a lapping at about 1 minute and 20 seconds, so we've got around 5 minutes of racing to go before the national champion for 2023 will be crowned, and it is still all together. So right now it's looking as if it might be a raging bunch sprint. So positioning absolutely crucial coming into that final left-hander. But Danny, there's still an opportunity if somebody's feeling good, somebody's feeling strong, and they go at the right time to go clear.
Yeah, you can just see Flora Perkins just lurking towards the front there on the left-hand side of the screen in the blue of Phoenix de Koenig. She's just been lurking about the front there, just almost waiting for her to launch an attack. As we said earlier on, she's had a really successful season so far as part of that Phoenix de Koenig development team. She's in this race alongside Millie Cousins, who's in the World Tour team, so they will know each other well.
I wonder if if things do come to a sprint, one will look after the other, or they both sprint independently. It's a difficult one, especially when there's a national champions jersey up for grabs, and that's the unique proposition about this, isn't it? Although you've got teams and they won't directly ride against each other, if there's an opportunity and you think you can win, you're going to grab it with both hands, and that's one of the unusual dynamics. It's very different than a normal road race or a normal circuit race, because there's only one jersey.
Oh, there is only one jersey, but yeah, it's a really difficult one, isn't it? Because, you know, all year you work together as a team, but there will be, you know, discussions that will be had within the teams as to whether they will outright ride for one particular rider if they stand a really good chance of winning, or whether it's a case of we won't ride against each other. You know, if you go up the road, we'll do our best to kind of help your position, but you know, when it comes into the finish, it could be fair game. So it's kind of down to the teams to decide that, how they're going to approach the race.
Well, still all together as the seconds tick by, the kilometres tick by, the laps tick by. No riders, we haven't, since the race has actually restarted, we haven't really seen a big attack on the front. We've seen some sharp accelerations, but we haven't seen an emphatic attack. And on the right hand side of the screen, in the red jersey with that national champions tipping, is the 2021 champion, the only rider in this field to know what it's like to be crowned the national circuit race champion. That's Tinley, but she's laying off at the moment. But the dominant team at the head of affairs in positions 2, 3 and 4 are the DAS handling squad. Emma Jeffers is there, Monica Greenwood is there as well, and as you were talking about earlier on, Kat Ferguson in the green. She's also got a teammate from the Shibden Hope Tech Apex team there as well, and also not too far away from the Phoenix DeKernick team, as you said, is Mizzy Cousins and Flora Perkins. So this is winding up to be a scintillating last couple of laps, but nobody willing to grasp the nettle right now and go clear. It looks as if they're settling for a sprint, but saying that, there's a big move on the right hand side there by Joe Tindley.
It's been pretty cagey for these opening laps, hasn't it? But coming into the finish now, starting to see some more riders coming up towards the finish with 2 laps to go. Meg Barker of Team Inspired coming towards the front in that green jersey.
Yeah, Megan Barker just there, as you said, in the green with Team Inspired, the only one of her team in this group, or in this field should I say, sits in position at number 3 now. This is a long turn on the front, it really is, stringing them out, but essentially it's one long lead out at the moment. Will we see an attack? We've got about 1.5 laps to go now. We've only got about 2.5 minutes of racing before the 2023 Elite Women's Champion of the circuit race will be crowned here in Redcar. This is getting pretty stressful here, Danny.
It is coming in towards the final lap of this race. Positioning is going to be absolutely key, and we've got a lot of very fast finishes in towards the front of this bunch. We're looking at the likes of Sophie Lewis, Meg Barker, Emma Jeffers, all up towards the front. They've got a really fast finish on them.
Well, Meg Barker now takes things up at the front in the green. She leans into that corner. Looks like it's Greenwood on her wheel. Just lost the wheel into that corner there. Big acceleration to make sure they close those gaps. So as soon as you lay off the wheel, there's that extra little bit of effort required as we come in to the penultimate time in the finishing straight. Lots of glancing around. Is there going to be an attack from one person? Is somebody going to just try and go clear? But it doesn't look like it. We're coming up now with 1 lap to go here in Redcar. An excitable, big crowd has assembled here. And what are they going to see? It's been an eventful race so far as the crowds bang the boards. 1 lap to go now, Danny.
Oh, just a kilometre of racing to go until we know who will be taking home that stripy jersey.
It looks like it's Jenny Hall moving up through to the front from the Techers team as well. A rider who's very explosive, but right now it's the youngster from Team Inspired, Megan Barker, who's taking it up on the left-hand side. Although she's been overtaken now as though the rest of the field, you can see how high this pace is. Riders just struggling to stay in the wheels here, still all together, coming in well into the final kilometre here. No real organisation from any teams. Of course, we've got several riders there from the DAS handling bike team. You'd imagine Emma Jeffs has got the best position.
Got Maddie Leach now on the front of the bunch. She won the under-23 time trial and using that power to good effect.
Well, Maddie Leach, as you said, she in the first part of the race, she tried to go clear on her own, but she's got a big engine. You don't win the under-23 TT championships unless you've got an engine, and she's going long here to try and eke out a little bit of a gap. She steamrolls into that corner, Coming in to the finishing straight now, looks like Leach is going to go very, very long. This is it. This is the final pull for line, and Leach has opened up a gap using that enormous talent that she has, but also starting to wind things up as well. Is Kat Ferguson. Ferguson is there. Ferguson is on the wheel now of Barker. It's Barker and Ferguson. Who's going to take this one? It is Barker. Ferguson. Oh, it's tight on the line, but it looks like it's Kat Ferguson. Or is it Barker? Barker takes the win on the line for Team Inspired. An inspired performance by Barker, and she is your national champion.
Wow, what a final few laps that was. Absolutely incredible. But Megan Barker just coming to the front in the final few laps, positioning herself really well. We know what a fast finish Megan Barker's got on her. She's won a round of the Tour Series last year, winning in the team pursuit in just in April in Milton. What an incredible performance there, but a massive lead out from her friend there, Maddie Leach of Life Plus Wahoo, the under-23 time trial champion, crowned just on Wednesday. Unfortunately, she couldn't make it the double today, but yeah, what an exciting few laps we had at the finish there.
It was quite tactical, wasn't it? But as you said, when Leach went to the front, if you've got a big engine like that, especially with a cross tailwind finish, and this might inform a little bit how the men's race happened, and a lot of the men were looking at this with a lot of interest in terms of the dynamics, especially the finishing straight, but they did the right thing. It's so hard at those high speeds when a rider is riding on the front of that. It's different in a headwind because there's so much more shell to it. In a cross tailwind, there's a definite advantage for trying to go early. And it was a fair sprint, thank goodness, after the chaos that ensued earlier on. But she is now the national champion, and that smile says it all. It really does, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. Obviously means a lot, and for any of these riders, they would have loved to have taken the win today and everything that comes with it. So yeah, good to see from Megan Barker. She's not really raced on the road much this year, so not a bad way to open your road season.
It was very close in the front. The two women in green crossing the line, first and second. Kat Ferguson, an exceptionally good second place. She's got a bright future as well, but it gets smiles all round. She's soon going to be on the podium, and for the next 12 months will be wearing that jersey. Here it is again in slow motion. A seated sprint in the end, and quite often you'll get seated sprints when it's very quick. It's just easier, isn't it, to put the power through the bike if you remain seated. The bike doesn't go all over the place, but first and second there. Now the two young riders, confirmation of third place was indeed Madeline Leach, who essentially, as you were talking about, did that big lead out. So a great week of racing by Leach, already the national champion at the TT, but used that enormous engine to devastating effect. Couldn't quite pull off a double jersey win, but good enough for bronze on the day.
Yeah, but really exciting to see the young Kat Ferguson up there in second place. We saw her throughout the race, always positioned really well. But yeah, as we mentioned, she's taken some phenomenal results over on the continent, winning the Junior Tour of Flanders and Trofeo Alfredo Binda in the Nations Cup. So a very bright future ahead for the 17-year-old Kat Ferguson.
There we go.
Teammates there of Kat Ferguson just celebrating. There's a big result for the team, you know, they're all juniors within the team, so yeah, it's phenomenal that they can come to this elite championships and take home the silver medal.
It does reflect a little bit on what happened last year, but the rain is starting to fall. Well, this is going to be interesting, as we see the men already on the circuit doing a bit of a warm-up. Now, I didn't actually see that rain was forecast, but that doesn't really matter, but it is definitely falling there. It's only a gentle drizzle, but that's going to be enough to make this quite interesting for the next race, isn't it?
Yeah. Light rain soaks you through, doesn't it?
It does.
But it also soaks the roads, which, yeah, of course, it's going to be a very different dynamic taking this circuit in the wet.
There you go, there's confirmation of the top 10. But your national champion is Megan Barker of Team Inspired. The silver medal goes to Kat Ferguson of the Shipton Hope Tech Apex team, and the bronze medal, already a national champion this week, as we discussed, Madeline Leach of Life Plus Yahoo. Then we have Sophie Lewis, Emma Jeffers, second last year, Monica Greenwood, Emily Proud, Flora Perkins, Jenny Hole, and Samantha Fawcett of Hutchinson's Brother UK, and that's your top 10. So the rain has started to fall. The national champion has been crowned. I think that's her team manager. Is that Emma? That's her team manager, isn't it? Oh, sorry, that's her agent, I think.
Eleanor Baxted on the side there, enjoying the racing. we'll see her in action on Sunday in the road race.
For the men's national championship, just to get a few laps while we await for the arrival of our riders for the podium.
Well, that is there, the podium that awaits Megan Barker, Kat Ferguson and Maddie Leach. The three medalists. It was, well, there's a lot to take away from that race. First and foremost, just want to wish anybody who was involved in those crashes all the very best. But it looks like we're setting up for a very, very quick podium protocol here.
Later next week as well, if you missed out on any of the action.
And the men's race was due to start at 8 o'clock. I'm not too sure if that will still be the case. It certainly won't, because it's 2 minutes past 8 already. But they'll try and turn this round as quickly as possible. I hope you've enjoyed at home, wherever you are in the world. Criterion racing, city centre racing, circuit racing, always exceptionally challenging.
Well,
it's racing on the very edge.
To try and wish the rain away, at least for the next hour and a half or so. That'd be handy.
I think Carl there on the podium requesting maybe a rain dance from some of the people on the finishing straight. I think some of them, the male riders we've got up next, will be hoping that the rain does go, but it will change things massively. The riders will be looking at dropping pressure in their tyres for a start, and it to be a whole new approach. And when you get a wet circuit with 6 corners, immediately you're going to have a field that's possibly thinned out far quicker, and a lot of riders just psychologically taken out of the mix as well.
Yeah, I mean, it can, you know, if they haven't got it in the head, then yeah, the rain can really do you in mentally. And as you say, well, some riders will love it. They absolutely relish the tough conditions. So for some riders, it's an advantage, and they'll be, you know, rubbing their hands together at the prospect of it. But of course, when the roads are wet, it is so crucial that the riders are well positioned up towards the front, just to avoid any potential crashes that could occur on the corners. We saw obviously Katie Archibald taking a tumble on one of those turns just as the rain had started, that the road has obviously got a little bit wetter and a little bit more slippery under the tyres. So yeah, it's definitely something that could be impactful through this men's race.
Yeah, definitely
Ladies
one or
and
something
gentlemen,
to watch out for, but
for the women's
fair play to the organisers here and British Cycling for turning around the podium.
The medals and the jersey will be presented by Bob Howden, President of British Cycling, and the flowers will be presented by the Mayor
Bob Howden,
of
President of British Cycling, has been for a long time. He knows his way around a podium, that's for sure.
In third place, Life Plus Wahoo, Madeline Leach.
The bronze medal goes to Maddie Leach of Life Plus Wahoo. She attacked in the first half of the race to try and go clear. She went long today, probably with about 450 metres to go, stretched the field, good enough for the bronze medal.
Apex, Kat Ferguson.
Superb ride there by Kat Ferguson of Shibden Hope Tech, a junior rider, remember. Absolutely superb performance by her. But your winner,
British Cycling National Circuit Race Champion, representing Team Inspired, Megan Barker.
It is indeed Megan Barker of Team Inspired. And it's a hackneyed phrase, but that was an inspired performance. It really was. Active all the way through, making sure she was in a good position. And it ended up taking it quite emphatically in the end with an explosive sprint, perfectly timed. And she'll now get to wear that beautiful jersey for the next 12 months.
Yeah, I'm sure this is an incredibly proud moment for Megan Barker.
The medal winners will now receive the flowers.
So some flowers for our medal winners now. And then it'll be a moment to savour, shaking the bubbly and then reflecting and enjoying the moment as well, because these riders will be shortly thinking about, a lot of these riders were thinking about what's on Sunday and the rest of the season as well. So it is important to really enjoy these moments. These are the moments that you work for, and not many riders in their career will ever win that jersey. It will be something that remains a dream that was never attained. But so I think it's important that these riders, especially the winners, take time to reflect on such an important victory.
Yeah, absolutely. And for Megan Barker, obviously having a lot of big goals coming up with the World Championships in Glasgow.
Lap to go, you're on the front.
Yeah. Let's hear from her now.
No, not really, but I ended up getting a mega lead out from Maddie, who decided to go quite early, so yeah, it worked out quite well, but no, I wasn't that confident, to be honest.
It's all about timing your attack to the right moment on that long run to the line.
Yeah, every lap I was kind of picking out which point I wanted to step out of the wheels, so yeah, I kind of had a plan and I just hoped it would go.
Well, it certainly did. You now have the gold medal and that national championship jersey. You can't be more pleased than that.
No, definitely, I'm very pleased.
Congratulations. So we now invite you to uncork the champagne.
It's champagne time now. Didn't quite hear everything what was said by Megan Barker there, but it's worth noting as well, we're just pointing it out there, Danny, that there's an injury or a cut to the knee of Kat Ferguson. Clearly one of the riders caught in that crash, but managed to remount.
Again, congratulate our medal winners.
And a superb silver medal. There we go, a proper champagne moment there for Megan Barker, but she won't mind a little bit of sting of champagne. Certainly sweeter than the sting of lactic acid in her legs, that's for sure. There's your podium. A superb race, an eventful race, but Megan Barker is the national champion. Kat Ferguson and Maddie Leach round out the podium. So a great race in the end.
It was indeed, obviously a little bit more dramatic than we were perhaps expecting, but good to see everyone was safe, and yeah, we were treated to a pretty phenomenal sprint at the end there.
Well, without further ado, we're going to move straight on to the men's race. So we'll be back on the podium shortly as we look at a little bit behind the scenes action.
I mean, I've got no cue. Madeline, many congratulations. That was, well, it was eventful, wasn't it? Talk us through it.
Yeah, quite chaos. It's very fast, very flat circuit. Everyone's very on edge because obviously it's quite a fast race. Unfortunate crash in the middle. I think that set everyone off on a bit of a nervous foot, but yeah, got going again, and yeah, quite a fast few laps.
Were you obviously not caught up in that crash? Did you manage to get around it?
Yeah, I managed to brake in time. Everyone went down in front of me, but yeah, I managed to avoid it.
But then the restart, and as you say, just those 10 laps, very hard to gauge then how everyone's going to be, and that run-in as well, it's a difficult one to get right, isn't it? It's so fast.
Yeah, yeah, I didn't feel great the first 5 laps back. Had like cafe legs kind of. So yeah, I wasn't feeling great, but then managed to pick it up and get my head back in the game, and yeah, went for a long one which didn't really pay off in the end, but still happy with how I raced.
Happy with the bronze?
Yeah, happy, yeah.
Very well done. Congratulations.
Cheers.
Thanks, Madeline.
Good to hear from Maddie Leach there, taking the bronze medal after that impressive run in towards the finish, but noting the cafe legs that she never wanted to feel. That will be the worst cafe stop for many of these riders. But as we say, good job that everyone was able to recover from that crash well. Maddie Leach was one of the riders that was impacted but didn't come down, fortunately, and yeah, strong performance in towards the finish. Unfortunately, it wasn't another gold medal for her today, but bronze nevertheless, and a really decent performance from the young rider from Life Plus Wahoo.
Well, Kat, many congratulations. Silver, are you happy with that?
Yeah, I'm really happy with that. I'm a junior, so to podium and elite national champs is pretty special, yeah.
I mean, an eventful race, and you got caught up in that crash, didn't you?
Yeah, so it was a crash about 40 minutes in. Fortunately, it was neutralised because there was some riders quite badly hurt, so wishing them a fast recovery.
And it happened right in front of you or right alongside you?
Yeah, right in front of me, just didn't have no time to brake, so came down, but I'm not hurt, so.
So how hard was that delay and then going again to get your head in the game?
Yeah, quite difficult because my frame had fully cracked, so I had to change bikes and then didn't realise it was neutralised, so I did a full lap round and then realised everyone had stopped due to the riders still on the floor. But mentally it was quite hard. Thankfully, due to it being neutralised, I was able to kind of calm myself and start again.
Well done, Kat.
Thank you.
Cheers, thanks.
Interesting insight there, as well as the injury to her knee. Cracked the bike as well, just shows how hard those riders went down. So, and a nice sporting gesture there as well, wishing the riders that were indeed injured all the very best, which we do as well. We of course echo that sentiment. So it is now time, in the next couple of minutes, for the British National Circuit Race Championships for the elite men. They cover the same distance as the women, 55 minutes and 5 laps. It'll be certainly difficult to match in terms of being eventful, but what we have the addition of now is this rain that we were talking about earlier on, which certainly will affect the speed they can corner, but will suit the riders who can handle their bikes particularly well. And one of those riders It's just on the front there, Alex Briggs on the left-hand side with that ginger beard in the very distinctive Tekker's CC kit. Again, he's got some bigger engines to contend with, but in terms of technical ability, Alex Briggs, one of the most technically able riders out there, and won't be too bothered about wet corners. It might actually play into his favour a little bit if he can ride well, look after himself. And there's some of the riders to watch here. Matt Bostock, he is the defending champion, previous medalist as well. Charlie Tanfield, William Tidball and Larissa Britton, all from St Piran. The Continental team based in Cornwall. Luke Rowe from the Innes Grenadiers there with Josh Tarling. Josh Tarling, the brand new minted Elite TT champion, and Lewis Askey and Sam Watson from Groupama FDJ. Sam Watson, a medalist in the Crit Champs last year and a medalist on the Road Champs as well. He had a cracking weekend. And also watch out as well for the 2018 champion Matthew Gibson, now riding in the orange of Human Powered Health. So a few spots of rain, as you can see on our camera screen there, on the lens should I say, but it won't be too long before we should be underway. And so we should be roughly finishing, I think, around 9:20. The light will actually start to fade then, especially with it being a little bit overcast. So that could be an interesting one as well, just to add to the mix, add to the excitement a bit, Dan.
You might want to take your sunglasses off, then you get an extra half an hour daylight, don't you?
Definitely. And again, because of the difficult, I think it's fair to say we're talking about the races that have been cancelled in the UK. Same can be said for the men. They've got some circuit races. Most of them are still to come. No Tour Series. So again, for a lot of the riders here, not many opportunities to test themselves out in circuit racing. So it's going to be very similar. I think there's going to be a lot of unknowns here, isn't there?
Yeah, there is, but I think it makes it a little bit more exciting
It does.
as well. A little bit unexpected, I guess, and could be some riders that pull a big surprise. So, yeah, can't wait to go racing again.
Yeah, definitely another rider to watch out for in the very distinctive livery of the Trinity Racing team, Max Walker, second place in the under-23 TT just a few days ago now. There is Sam Watson on the left-hand side. Really hit the ground running with Groupama FDJ. It really has. Rode for their development team last year and has stepped up to World Tour level now. Exceptionally talented. It's a strong field. We've got 70 riders again. And there's the two riders from Tekker's on the front. The other one is Joe Holt, and there's St Piran. That's Mazzone, the Mazzone brothers, both riding here for St Piran. They've had a cracking season. 3 big wins at international level. But they're saving a couple of the riders, understandably, for the weekend. But this first scouting lap will be an interesting one, and then expect a fast and furious pace. I reckon they'll be lapping in about 1 minute and 10 seconds, but that could be shaved off, or might be a little bit slow because of the corners. They're not going to be able to carry the same pace as the women did in the corners, are they?
No, they're not. You're going to have to really scrub some speed off when the corners are damp, and yeah, nobody wants to go down in the circuit race, so there is going to have to be some care and attention paid on those corners. But yeah, there might be some riders that are there willing to risk it if they've got a jersey on the line.
Certainly, and there's a little bit of shoulder barging. Well, not exactly shoulder barging, just a little bit of brushing along. It's about establishing yourself and showing authority. It really is. Let's be honest with it, it's not for the faint-hearted criterium riding, is it? Especially when it is, you have to be super confident, and riders will sense a lack of confidence and just moving through gaps that aren't really there. It is, it's fascinating. We're just going to see this moment again. I mean, all it was a coming together. Nothing really to write home about, but it just shows, it's just that gentle brushing, it's just showing I'm in control here. It's like a press conference at a boxing match.
Yeah, but it's important that you are able to make contact as a rider, that you always want your body to be in contact with the other rider and not your bike. So handlebars touching isn't generally a good idea, so you will see the riders just leaning in towards each other just to try and avoid that. But a little bit of authority being stamped, as you said.
Indeed. Well, this is of course a neutralised lap. A steady pace being set, but this doesn't really give you a real sense of what it's going to be like. It's all right cornering at this speed in the wet, 5 or 6 k an hour slower. And as we look at, I think it's Tanfield there for St Piran. Of course, Charlie Tanfield is a local. Now with his brother, he's from Yorkshire. He's trained on these roads back in the day, and already we've got a very, very fast start. So this is it. The men's elite national circuit race championship is now underway. Neutralised lap is done and dusted, and already, despite the wet surface, Danny, they're carrying a lot of speed into that first left-hander. Woof!
They are indeed. I thought he was going to throw the anchors on a bit there, but no, as you were.
Well, there we go. We know that we talked in the women's race about the tyre technology, wider tyres and running lower pressure. It does give you that little bit more grip, but you can still get it wrong. We saw Katie Archibald get it wrong on that corner while she was away. And then, of course, there was that crash shortly afterwards to have the race neutralised. But now moving through to the front is Sam Watson of Groupama FDJ, second in 2022 and, of course, third in the road race last year as well. He's got his teammate with him for company, Lewis Askey, who was third in 2021. So both of these World Tour riders know how to ride a half-decent criterium.
Half decent, yeah, of course. Yeah, very accomplished crit riders, and have really been doing their thing over on the continent. As you say, Sam Watson stepping up to the World Tour team and really showing his colours and doing a good job for the squad this year.
It's also worth noting, there's, as you said, two riders from Groupama FDJ over the World Tour, but also Ben Askey and Noah Hobbs are riding for the Groupama continental team as well. So they've actually got four riders, or they ride on different teams. Their kit is very similar, so you will see four riders there from Groupama FDJ as we head in. Lap number one is done and dusted, no real moves. Just see Josh Tarling moving on the right hand side there. He was second in this race last year. Such a powerful rider, junior world time trial champion, remember, and the distance that he beat the others the other day to win an elite as still an under 23, to win an elite championship by the margin of a minute is utterly incredible, isn't it? Here he is on the front now.
Yeah, I mean, to beat a rider like Fred Wright by 1 minute and 3 seconds is just incredible, isn't it? And yeah, obviously he's shown what a accomplished bike rider he is. He was so aggressive in the closing laps of this race last year, going on the attack multiple times in the last 5 laps of the race from that winning breakaway. But yeah, of course, he's got some decent power on him. You don't become world junior champion and now the British elite time trial champion without some serious watts.
And of course, the thing about these World Tour riders riding here, they've got that technical ability, and a lot of them have grown up riding criteriums as well. That they know how to ride these circuit races. It's bread and butter of growing up and racing in Great Britain. But now they've got this World Tour engine as well, so they're happy to ride on the front, and they do have the ability to ride hard for a very, very long time. And actually, because of the sketchy nature of these corners, they'll want to dictate terms and make it as hard as possible, so they're in control of what's going on now as well.
Yeah, it's really important for them to try and stay out of trouble, and the best way for them to do that is to go racing from the front. You can see just how lined out this bunch is after just a lap going round there. So yeah, obviously the pressure that is being placed on the front by the riders like Sam Watson and Josh Tarling is really stringing this bunch out.
That certainly is. Getting a feel for those corners at speed as well. And first time we've just seen Harry Tanfield. Both of the brothers are riding. Charlie Tanfield, of course, in the black of St Piran, but it's now Harry Tanfield is now moving through to the front. Second in the Elite Circuit Race Championships in 2021. We've already talked about that wonderful night in Lincoln. Second place there, and that little breakaway that went away now rides for the Tour de Tietona Unibet team. It's a continental team. As of course Harry Tanfield has raced at World Tour level in the past, remember, but right now it's at St Piran, setting the tempo at the front. One of the biggest squads in this race. Actually got 7 riders here, and they've got real options here to potentially win this race, especially with Tom and Leon Mazzone, 2 very fast riders, and then Charlie Tanfield can go long as well. So they've got a real strength in depth in terms of numbers anyway, that's for sure. But these riders know how to ride a circuit race, but still altogether no real attack so far. So just look how aero these riders get. These turned in lever hoods. Didn't quite see it quite as much in the women's racing, but it's more. It seems more in men's racing. There's these super extreme positions on the bike. We know the reasons why. It's just to get the aerodynamic, but they certainly do punch a small hole in the air. Sam Watson heads to the front. I mean, even when it's been raining, after a few laps, you know what the surface is like, you can then start to set a rhythm that you're comfortable with and then open up the power on the flat, can't you?
Yeah, you really want to put the watts down as you come out of the corner, but the difficulty in this race is that the road conditions will change like as the riders are riding. We saw that Josh Tarling now going on the attack, putting down those serious watts that we spoke about, just attacking just before the corner.
Yeah, that was just up the high street, and now they've been going into Lord Street. It's essentially an elongated chicane there, that right off the high street, back onto Lord Street. Again, it's only a short straight here, with only being 1 kilometre round. It's not long before you have to shave the speed off, accelerating, decelerating. That's one of the unique aspects of circuit racing. It's that you certainly won't get a level power profile. It'll be quite staccato, although this circuit, some of the corners, as you can see, are quite flowy. You don't need to brake too much, but look at the difference in the shape of the bunch once Tarling gets on the front.
It's not a bunch anymore, is it? It's just a line of riders in single file. But yeah, Josh Tarling just happy to set the pace there, closely followed by Charlie Tanfield.
It just rolls through. Yeah, Charlie Tanfield takes things through. Several St Piran teammates, and already after that big acceleration, wasn't really an attack as such. It was just putting his feelers out there. I wanted to try and spread this race out, of course. And a lot of riders, what they want to do is, it's not just getting themselves in a good position. What they want to do is thin this bunch out, because criteriums are more chaotic when there's a bigger field, especially if the pace lulls. So quite often, the purpose of riding hard on the front, although you will expend a little bit of energy, is to try and thin the group as quickly as possible to make it more manageable, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, but also in these damp conditions, the risk of crashing obviously increases massively. So the safest place to be is up near the front. But we got a really interesting camera shot there that if you almost put a clock on when the riders in the front here pass through a turn, we've still got riders taking the previous turn there, so the length of the bunch is so long. If you find yourself in the back sort of 5-10 riders of this bunch and somebody lights it up at the front, you stand absolutely no chance of making it back to them. So yeah, the race happens from the front.
Exactly, you're quite right there. You saw Josh Tarling turning onto the Esplanade, and there were still riders in Lord Street, the other side of the circuit, coming round a good 200 metres behind, and there's so much power at the front of this bunch. Look, there's still riders just coming into the finishing straight, have already been distanced. Another big acceleration into that corner. Watson on the left-hand side just lifts his front wheel over that pothole, of the drain, as we lean the bikes into this corner. It looks as if the riders have now got the measure of this circuit. Although the rain, we did see that little bit of rain, it does appear to have abated a little bit, because they're now carrying quite a lot of speed into that corner. So with these warm conditions and not too much rain, it will dry up, as you said, quite quickly.
Yeah, it will, and lap on lap you can take these corners perhaps a bit faster, and it's just kind of testing the limits each lap when you go through without going over the limit, which is obviously not the best idea.
Well, the rider in third position there in the red of the Lotto Destiny development team is Joshua Giddings. He used to race with his father back in the day from the Derbyshire area, is Giddings. And another big acceleration here on the front. The unmistakable figure of Charlie Tanfield for St Piran. Superb track rider. This is really where some of these riders are most at home. I think time trials, the track and criteriums, that's what's just Charlie Tanfield's preferred terrain, I think it's fair to say, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, former world champion in the team pursuit, he's obviously got some pedigree over the shorter distances, but look, just adopting that super aerodynamic position. I'm not sure how much control over the bike you have when you have your hands that close together, but it's not doing him any harm at the moment. I
think in a straight line it's okay, but you're quite right. But the way he's got the handlebars splayed there, almost like on a gravel bike. So you've got the narrow position to get us in front of the straight, and then a little bit more control because of the splayed design of the drops in the corners to give it that added stability. So we're seeing some really interesting handlebar permutations, but you're quite right. He certainly wouldn't want a corner on that position, and he didn't, to be fair to him. As Tarling now hits the front again, Watson in second position, and the brother of the aforementioned Charlie Tanfield, Harry Tanfield, now in third position, as riders continue to get spat out on the back on this flowing circuit. It really is. I think I'm really quite enjoying this circuit. No elevation at all, save for a gentle kick up on that final left-hander after the finish, but a fast race so far.
It is indeed, but you can see that it was just almost like a little bit faster coming into that last left-hand turn there, so the rider's really carrying in some speed, but obviously when you've got the power that Josh Tarling has, you're going to come in with speed.
You certainly are. Well, there are lots of riders in the black jerseys there of St Piran, 7 riders strong. The other rider up and near the front, it took a few turns on the front, that was William Roberts, and now there's a conversation between the riders that rounded out the podium last year. They have a little look round. Giddings is there as well, and also Askey are now moving up as well. So I think it's Ben Askey from Groupama. He's the brother of Lewis Askey, in fact. So a couple of brothers in the field here. Be a very imposing figure of Josh Tarling, though, takes them into that bend on the inside. He really is a man mountain. You can understand why he can put so much power through the bike, as Watson, more of an all-rounder, isn't he? Watson can sprint well. He's a very good climber as well.
I was really impressed with the way that Sam Watson rode this race last year. He was very canny in the closing laps. Didn't do too much work. Left that up to Matt Bostock to chase down the attacks of Josh Tarling. Knowing that Matt Bostock was the fastest rider in that group, he, as I say, played a very canny race.
He certainly has. We haven't seen Bostock at all so far. We haven't seen Gibson. There's only 2 previous champions here. Of course, Matt Bostock is the only rider from his team, and he rides for the Black Spoke Cycling Academy, New Zealand squad, riding at the Pro Continental level. And won this title, as you were just saying, back in 2022. And the other rider, watch out for him. I haven't actually seen Gibson. He's in a very distinctive kit in orange. Actually, I think he's about, I haven't seen him at all actually at the moment. Laying a little bit low, riding for the human-powered health team. But right now on the front for St Piran is Will Roberts, clearly just trying to keep this pace as high as he can. But there's lots of looking around, isn't there? We talked about the fact these riders won't necessarily know what riders' form is in a race like this, but lots of riders making sure they've got the measure of everybody else. Yeah,
as you say, a lot of looking around, just scoping each other out. But I think, to be honest, you don't really get to know what the other riders are capable of unless you actually have to cover some attacks or the power is really laid down. Then we start to find out who is in the best shape.
Well, just a bit of a clerical administrative issue, and Matt Gibson didn't start. That's why we can't see him.
That's why we can't see him.
That's why we can't see him. So the 2018 national champion, a non-starter today.
I was going to say, because the human-powered health kit is not one that you normally miss in the bunch.
Even from a kilometre away, you can see that kit. Yeah, fluorescent, burnt orange and purple. So very easy to spot. As is the rather stealthy kit of St Piran, who've had a superb season so far. Performing well on all fronts, domestically and abroad as well. It's really such an interesting project. But a women's team as well, based out of Cornwall. Steve Lampier is a former teammate of mine back in the day, and now running that team. Been racing over in Norway recently, in France. So I've got a proper international programme, and it is a big. I mean, it's great for that team, but the domestic scene. And it is quite cyclical from time to time, where you get less teams and that impacts on the races that are available. Let's hope that over the next couple of seasons we can build things back across both women's and men's, because I think this is probably one of the seasons where we've seen the least amount of men's continental teams.
Yeah, it's obviously a really tricky time for the teams and then for the riders that are left without teams. And as you say, it kind of has a knock-on effect with regards to the racing that's available. Of course, we spoke before in the women's race about the Tour Series, which unfortunately we weren't able to see this year. Hopefully we will get the Tour Series back, and riders are able to stretch their criterium legs next year, because it is a very well received series of races throughout the city centres, and ones that the riders really enjoy.
Yeah, definitely important for the sponsor of these teams, and in fact, as well as the Tour of Britain and the Elite Circuit Series and the Elite Road Race Series, essentially part of the lifeblood of the domestic calendar. But as you say, I echo your sentiment there, Danny. Let's hope that things build back to a more successful and a more fruitful 2024. But races like this are enormously there. The importance of the national championships can never be diminished, but even more so now, to win that title for your team. has, I think, even more resonance than ever before, because there is a real dearth of races, so this is particularly important now as they spread all across. There's been a crash. A couple of riders have laid it down on that corner. Can't identify anybody just yet. I think there was actually no, not too sure who that was, but maybe we'll get a replay of that. It was just coming into the finishing straight, so there's clearly a little bit of moisture, or perhaps a little bit of a touching of wheels, as this field continues to thin out. Really throttle into that corner on the power, the slightest little bit of elevation, and it's a horrible thing to experience though, isn't it? Even at the front of the bunch, you can hear the clatter behind. So rider number 5 is down, and that is Sam Kettlewell of the Embark Spirit team. Unfortunately for Kettlewell, with no laps out, I think it's going to be very difficult for him to get back in the mix now.
Yeah, it's going to be almost impossible to get yourself back in the bunch after taking a spill. And we saw in the women's race a big crash which happened just next to the pit, so for some of the riders that were able to jump back on their bike and get a bike really quick, but if you crash on the opposite side of the track, then it's pretty much no chance of getting back.
And there he is. He's already almost been lapped. He's on the ground for a few seconds, and by the time he's got himself up and running, he's been lapped. And it looked like it was in the penultimate corner, just coming out of Lord Street, doesn't it, into that road that joins us onto the Esplanade here in a beautiful Redcar in Yorkshire, of course. And there are a few umbrellas out, so that does suggest perhaps that person's just protect themselves from the wind or the rain. But the way they're cornering, they're certainly undeterred. But again, toward the back end of the women's race, when it did start to rain, you'd imagine that a few riders have looked at that and definitely just taken a little bit of pressure out of the tyres to make sure they've got that extra grip on the corners.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you even hear that on the start line as riders start to panic a little bit, and you hear the tss. And once one person does it, you probably get 4 or 5 people that then doubt their choice and let it down. But it's a one-way street with that, isn't it? Because unless you're going to get the mechanic to come back out and pump them up, then you've got to deal with it.
No, totally. It is, I think we'd actually see that's Matt Bostock in the middle there from Black Spoke. I think he's right in the centre of his screen there. As Tarling again accelerates through to the front, powers round that corner, opens up a slight little bit of a gap. As soon as he lays on the power, every single time that this rider hits the front, immense power. You can really sense the power that he's putting through that bike, can't you? And again, this is a poor limping Sam Kettlewell. Looks like he may have hurt his leg there, and that's why he's holding it. Hasn't managed to clip in there, but Tarling here into this cross tailwind, finishing straight, accelerating, just trying to force some gaps. And this is where absolute power comes into effect, isn't it? On the flat, cross tailwind, that's where a rider of his stature, his ability, can make some enormous differences.
It does, and you can see the riders behind him just chewing their stems almost to try and hold the pace of Josh Tarling.
We're about 20 minutes into the race now, approximately 1/3 of the way through. Remember the distance of the Elite Circuit Race Championships, 55 minutes of racing plus 5 laps, and it's still no splits, no real big attacks off the front, but a relentless pace has been set. I think everybody pretty comfortable with the way that they're cornering now. And there is indeed. Bostock takes a drink out of his bottle, sat on the wheel of Watson. Bostock is very, very quick, but hasn't hit the front at all, has he? We've seen Tarling hit the front a lot. We've seen Watson on the front, but Bostock has just been watching those 3 riders. He's never had one of those riders behind him. He's always had sight of 2 of the riders that he respects and fears the most, and the riders that joined him on the podium last year. Yeah,
just keeping an eye on them, just not letting them get too much of a gap, and just keeping himself up towards the front there.
Just see him, just caught a glimpse of number 1 there. As we bank into the corner, again these laps ticking by very, very quickly. That's the penultimate bend, and this is the left hand that takes us back onto the Esplanade. The super high speeds. Tarling now in 3rd position. Doesn't want to do too much on the front. He's probably got the biggest engine in the field here, but he doesn't want to show his cards too much, because riders will just sit behind him. Although he can generate that power, if you do get tucked in behind him, he's also a lot of slipstream to take as well.
I don't think Josh Tarling can hide in this race though, is it? You might as well have a beacon on his helmet, because he's going to be incredibly well marked. Everybody knows the quality of Josh Tarling, and especially after that incredibly impressive time trial performance that he put in on Wednesday, he won't be able to get out the saddle without somebody jumping on his wheel.
Yeah, Harry Tanfield now on the front. It was quite a late deal that Harry Tanfield got, second in 2021 to ride for this team, the Tour de Tietena Unibet team. So he's been riding in the Netherlands and over in Belgium. And this indeed is Bostock now coming through in that purple kit of black smoke. The first time we've seen the defending champion on the front, rails into that corner, so confident. It's a very distinctive kit. Tarling straight on the wheel of the defending champion. And Matt Bostock make it 2 wins out of 2. It's a long time since we've had riders double up in the national championships, but this is our first sighting of Bostock on the front, and good to see.
It is good to see, and we know that he suffered a concussion back in the Commonwealth Games road race last year, and then unfortunately had another concussion in Cyclo-cross back in March. So good to see that he has made a recovery, and he's really laying down the power now. It's up to Josh Tarling to try and bring him back.
Well, out of that corner, that seated acceleration, even Harry Tanfield is struggling to stay on the wheel. It's a big acceleration by Bostock. Doesn't want to leave it to a sprint. Looks like happy to try and split things here. And when you can ride the likes of Tanfield off your wheel, just shows how well Bostock is going. And the first appearance on the front for the defending champion for the Black Spoke team in that purple kit has been potentially a decisive one.
Yeah, I think he threw down a watt bomb there, didn't he? And it was only Josh Tarling that's able to respond to this and hold the back wheel of our defending champion.
Actually, just looking back at a rider who's got back-to-back wins in the Elite Championships, and you have to look back to 1998 and 1999, Chris Walker. That's how unusual it is to win back-to-back circuit race championships. So Bostock on the front, Tarling in second position, Watson in third. That was your podium from last year. Just a 5th or 6th position there, riding for the Lotto under-23 development team is at Josh Gibbings as well. So happy to do a full lap on the front here.
Yeah, it's impressive, isn't it? We know what a fast finish Matt Bostock has, so yeah, it's interesting to see him really laying down the power so early. He's obviously wanting to try and repeat his performance from last year when these 3 riders that are on the front here now were away. Originally a breakaway of 4 riders, but 3 of them come in towards the finish.
Yeah, it's starting to split here, and they know that if you get the class of this sort of riders cornering like they are and then laying down the power, it gets increasingly difficult to shut the gaps. And the rider who's been pretty stealthy there in the 2nd or 3rd or 4th position is Ollie Wood. And he's unattached, not riding for a team, but has got a real track pedigree and is looking good, looking very, very comfortable. Watch out for Wood. He's the man riding on that canyon bike, sat on the wheel of Bostock as Tanfield again just gets gap coming out of that corner. Tarling looks around, asks for assistance from the man now rolling through to the front, Sam Watson, only 21 years of age, remember, now riding at World Tour level. Emerged last year and has really developed very, very quickly. And it is a relatively new phenomenon across the board in women's racing and in men's racing. You get these younger riders who are developing so quickly now, aren't they?
They are, and yeah, it's almost turning into a young person's sport, isn't it? Traditionally, it was always, you know, as a real endurance sport of road cycling, that it takes many years of hard training to be able to build up that base that's required to compete at the very highest level. But, you know, with the likes of Tadej Pogačar, Remco Evenepoel, we're seeing, you know, time and time again that these riders are able to come almost straight out of juniors, as Josh Tarling is showing us, and perform at the very highest level.
You're quite right, yep, don't forget the man in 2nd place there, the newly crowned elite time trial champion of Great Britain, as you correctly said, straight out of the juniors and now riding at World Tour level. Big acceleration here by Ollie Wood. This is a very strong move. Even Tarling not exactly struggling to get on the wheel, but there's a little bit of a delay. I think it's fair to say that Wood's probably got a little bit of a crisper acceleration, a big engine of Tarling, but Wood is a real, well, he's just very, very fast on the track. He's got a cracking sprint. Good at the points race as well, so that's why he's able to open up this gap. It's that punch immediately out of the corner that separates him a little bit from some of the other riders.
Yeah, it is, and you know that's why he's the European scratch champion. You know, team pursuit world champion. He's got a real pedigree on the track. So, yeah, of course, when someone like Ollie Wood puts down the pressure on the pedals, it's going to be very difficult to react to that really sharp acceleration.
Well, look at that. Ollie Wood is now clear. That was a dramatic acceleration for the vast majority of the first 25 minutes of this race, Ollie Wood has been sat in about 4th, 5th or 6th position, not putting his nose in the wind, and as soon as he does it, he's out and away. And who's coming across the gap? It looks like it is the figure of Charlie Tanfield. Now, St Piran, with 7 riders in this field and definitely the chance to win this race, need to shut this down. Other riders will look to them because they've got strength in number. It's what's expected of them, it's what they want to do, and that's why Tanfield is now clear. Yeah,
and Charlie Tanfield, obviously a rider of very similar qualities to Ollie Wood, a very accomplished track rider in his own right. So he's going to be chasing after his mate, going up down the road. And yeah, as you say, it is down to St Piran to try and close this down, but also now they need to use their numbers in the front. So as we see Charlie Tanfield trying to come across the gap, it's now up to his teammates to sit towards the front of the bunch and just try and dissuade any other riders from trying to get across the gap.
Yeah, it's as you said, world champion, team pursuit, multiple national champion as well, and I think it's worth saying it is a shame that a rider of this class is riding unattached. It is an enormous shame, but he's certainly put himself in the shop window. But the difficult thing, there were so many good riders, there just weren't enough places in the continental teams domestically, but still Ollie Wood is in great shape. But look at the calibre of rider that's having to come to the front to bring him back, because he is a danger. You don't want to let a rider of this class get 15-20 seconds on a circuit like this. And good also to see Alec Briggs in the mix as well. He was disappointed with his performance last year, got caught behind the wrong split. But Briggs willing to press on at the front now as well.
This could be a really frustrating part in the race for the riders behind, because once one rider goes up the road, you get multiple riders trying to bridge across, but everyone recognises the danger and everyone just jumps on all of the counter attacks that's there. So it can get really frustrating behind. You see a number of riders just looking around at each other, shaking their heads. You saw Sam Watson a moment ago looking a bit frustrated that there wasn't the cohesion in the group to try and bring back this lone leader.
Well, that's the phenomenon that you get in road racing and in circuit racing, is the fact that even if you do get cohesion behind, you don't get the same level of commitment. And that's the different thing. When you've got a rider going full pelt, 100% committed, riding essentially a time trial, Ollie Wood now, doesn't need to do too many sharp accelerations. It's all about trying to smooth this course out now. But behind, they'll want to try and keep the pace high, but what they won't give is 100%, which is what Ollie Wood's doing now. And that's why incrementally he's moving clear. You need the riders now to sacrifice themselves, and that only comes from teams with number. Yeah, it does, and but it's just whether the teams with numbers are prepared to do it this early on in the race. And it is a defending champion, Matt Bostock, that we can see on the front, but you can just see the pressure has completely come out of that group behind. You can see Matt Bostock just taking a swig of his drink, almost as if to say, I'm not going to do it, you do it. Yeah, well, this man, I'm just looking at it. Would take me the best part of half an hour to read out his track Palmyra, so won't do it. All I can tell you is that he's at the very pinnacle. He's been a world champion as well. So well decorated on the road. In fact, I did race with his dad back in the day in the 1980s. Yes, I am that old. But there we go, Danny. But a real pedigree, and now it is St Piran having to ride hard on the front here. This is what they need to do. Glancing around for some assistance, just under 16 seconds. You see the face there of Harry Tanfield. When you see grimacing from riders of that class on a circuit like this, you know that Wood is really putting them to the sword and making them hurt. Yeah, and to open up a gap of 16 seconds is really quite impressive. So phenomenal riding so far from Oliver Wood. But as well as the power here, as well as the craft, as well as the pace he's taking into the corners, and we saw it with Katie Archibald as well. Look at his arms at 90 degrees, getting as low as he can. So it is that perfect, almost perfect combination of skill, but power, and then positioning on the bike. And it's Mazzone now. Leon Mazzone, I think, is now on the front. And the man from the Isle of Man, of course, St Piran, he's got his brother in the race. This is where St Piran really need to throw something at this. And meanwhile, up in front with a gap of about 10 or 15 seconds, Wood's about to lap his first few riders, and they'll be taken out of the race. So St Piran now taking the race up behind. Yeah, and Ollie Wood can just take a little bit of a draft from these riders who want to go almost straight past them, but just benefiting ever so slightly from their slipstream. Well, we nearly saw a little bit of an overlap from a couple of teammates there. We saw that before in the women's race, and that led to a catastrophe. But meanwhile, on the front now, this is Noah Hobbs of the Groupama FDJ Continental team. one of the finest, most successful continental teams in the world, it has to be said. So Hobbs now on the front, looks around, and it's the ferocious sight of Josh Tarling stamping on the pedals. 16.2 seconds the gap, and that's the response from Tarling. He respects this man, he fears him, that's why he's trying something.
Yeah, and it is a pretty decent gap that he's got now, so Josh Tarling obviously recognising the danger there and realises that this group are not going to be cohesive together, so the best way to bring him back is to go on the offensive.
So Wally Wood's now back. Well, they certainly are on the fit, but look at the gap he's opened up. I think that's gone up after that big acceleration. This is what happens behind it, isn't? He's riding this course smoothly now, as near to linear as he can, just to conserve energy and optimise his effort. He's still got to ride for another half an hour approximately. We've only got half an hour of racing, so another 25 minutes and then 5 laps. So this is now a real endurance test, as well as a first. It was that explosivity that drew him clear, and now he's got to hold it at this sort of speed, and that's no easy task.
It's not, and it really depends on the rider themselves, but I'm sure he probably would have liked a little bit of company during this attack. So yeah, it is an awfully long way to go on your own, knowing that you're being hunted from behind. But as I said last time, he's going to make use of the slipstream of all of these lap riders just to give himself that little bit of respite, because he knows that he is being hunted from behind.
Well, here he is in full flight. Well, this is a little bit behind. This is a rider that's this is indeed Ollie Wood. So I thought it was a lapped rider then, but he is wearing number 60. Great shot of him banking into that corner. Has a little bit of a glance over his shoulder. Doesn't need to. He can wind it up slowly. Doesn't need to kick really hard out of these corners now. As he shakes himself out, gets back into the aero tuck, and really straight lines is finishing straight. He drifted over to the left hand side to just shave a little, maybe a metre off there. So really smart, intelligent riding, straightening this finishing straight, trying to make it as short as possible, and also staying out of sight as well. So the gap foreshortened a little bit there. There's the two riders that he's left behind, that he's lapped. They will shortly be pulled out of the race. And a lovely shot behind. There's still a little bit of moisture on the lens. It makes it a little bit nervous. A little bit more rainfall and the surface can change, but right now he is looking absolutely dialed, isn't he?
He is indeed well into his rhythm now, and yeah, just clipping along at this. Obviously, you've got to break this race down into sections in your mind, and as we said before, he probably wouldn't have wanted to have gone alone, but the gap now showing at 1 minute and 6 seconds. This is quite a phenomenal gap, and if they want to bring back a rider of this quality, then they're really going to have to sort themselves out.
Yeah, it's certainly not unheard of in circuit racing. I mean, given the fact that we're lapping at that sort of speed, if he opens up a big gap, we sometimes see riders lap the field, but right now I just think there's too much firepower behind. Sam Watson accelerates on the front, another little bit of a glance behind, just to gauge the effort that he needs to make. He doesn't need to, again now, as you said, it's about effort management now. And let's say, okay, hypothetically, Danny, you're in the pits. What would you be saying to him now?
Well, yeah, obviously you need to really be giving the riders encouragement. They will want to know the time gaps on regular occasions, so you can give the riders time gaps obviously as they come past in the pits, but riders will often have people that are positioned on multiple parts of the circuit as well, and often the teams will put people on multiple sort of stations throughout the circuit and use a radio just to relay information between the staff members. But yeah, I think at the moment the most important thing is giving the time gaps, but also, you know, the encouragement that you need behind and information as to who's chasing behind. You know, if you know that, okay, it is a real powerhouse that's on the front and potentially coming across the gap, that information is really useful, because there might be points when a rider would sit up and wait for riders that were coming across the gap. But all of this information, you know, they're going past their team staff, you know, just over every minute. So, you know, that information can be relayed quite easily. But It's easier said than done in terms of listening to information that's being shouted out when you're travelling at 50-60 kilometres an hour. You often can't hear an awful lot, so it has to be really simple and concise.
Exactly. It's here. You don't get very long at all, as you quite rightly said. It's not as if you can drift back to a team car and have a long conversation, but just look at the pace behind. You really get a sense of the speed. This is a very, very fast circuit, primarily because they're managing to carry speed through a lot of the corners. Now the gap has definitely come down a bit now, and it looks, again, just from what we can see in terms of what's on the lens, 34 minutes of racing, yeah, the gap has definitely come down now. Watson hardly moved away from the top 3 or 4 positions. Josh Giddings there as well for the Lotto under 23 team. This is a hard effort now, really is. He's exceptionally dialed here, where the gap is starting to come down, and it's fair to say that this is now starting to hurt, as the gap now under 10 seconds, 9.6 seconds, and I think possibly now, as you alluded to a minute ago, Danny, this is where he would have liked that little bit of company. Even just one other rider or two is optimal on a circuit like this, but on your own, this is really hard now.
It is really hard, and yeah, obviously having company, you're able to share the workload, but if you're having a rider with you that has multiple teammates in the race, then it completely changes the dynamic, and the teammates behind are able to not necessarily block the road, but just perhaps put other people off and close other moves down. So yeah, it's tricky, and obviously now this time gap is starting to come down. The bunch behind will be starting to feel a little bit more confident, and at the same time Hollywood will know this gap is coming down, and yeah, it's not good for the morale, let's say.
Yeah, it's important now. I mean, he's clearly got good legs, there's no doubt about that. The way he left the group and the pain on the faces of the riders behind when they couldn't shut the gap just shows he's in good form. But now he needs to keep pressing on, but he's also got to be smart about what happens now. Is there a likelihood, if the gap continues to come down, does he wait for potentially another rider? Does he measure his effort, or does he stay committed? It's such a difficult one, isn't it? But a lot will be determined by what is going on behind. But there is still a lot of fresh legs in this field as the motorbike overtakes Wood, 8.6 seconds, so another second has been shaved off his lead now.
It has indeed, but you see that there is a kind of ebb and flow in the bunch behind, so we will start to see that time gate fluctuating, and it's not necessarily down to the effort of Hollywood, but just with the way that the bunch is racing against each other. They will have him in their sights for many of these longer straight sections, but as you come onto these twist and turny sections, he will still be out of sight.
Certainly will. Well, this is Will Tidball just on the wheel there of Josh Tarling. Tidball, a very, very quick finisher indeed. So St Piran still there with several riders at or near the front, but you are quite right that there is a distinct ebb and flow. There's no real unity behind. There are a couple of teams putting riders on the front and riding a bit, but it does ebb and flow. And this makes it very complicated in relation to how you measure your effort. But we've seen gaps almost close, come down to 3 or 4 seconds, and then nobody wants to do the last few meters, and then it goes out again. So that's something that quite commonly happens too.
It does, and I think for most breakaways it's why you ride until you're caught, because you just never know. We've seen it time and time again where the breakaway is all but caught. It's sort of 5-10 seconds away, and then they're able to just extend the gap out as the riders in the bunch behind just kind of sit up because they think, well, we're there now, and until you close down onto the wheel or the riders in front, it isn't over. So start to see he's gained an extra second again on this lap, so I think the bunch behind will be quietly confident that they've got him in check now, but again, he is not a rider that you want to let have too much of a distance.
No, definitely. Well, that was Leon Mazzone, a rider who's been out near the head of affairs on the front for St Piran a moment ago. It's all changed again. The rider just leaning into that bit, and that's Cameron McLaren of the Callas Moto Race team. So that's a squad getting involved, a bit of a conversation with somebody at the side of the road, maybe asking what the time gap is. It's around 10 seconds, or it's hovering at around 10 seconds. So good riding by this particular squad. The Callas Motip Race team with several riders at or near the head of affairs, and for the first time just Tarling's just moved a little bit further back down the group there, as several other riders now start to try and eat into this lead that Hollywood has earned. 38 minutes of racing, so that means we've got about 15 minutes or so before we hit the 55-minute mark, and then we'll have 5 laps to go. So we're coming up to the final third of this race now.
Yeah, it's certainly time to go racing now, isn't it?
Look at the face now of this man. He's used to riding team pursuits. He's used to riding a scratch race. I mean, a scratch race is probably the most similar thing to riding a criterium in terms of its, not so much its distance, but the effort. It is 50 laps on the track, something like that. But this is the kind of effort, especially if you're going solo in a scratch race, which often does happen. He'll be used to this, but he is spending a lot of energy at the moment, and there's still a lot of firepower behind. But he clearly, by the way he's riding, is just holding that little bit back as well, so he can maybe react to something. So it's about fully committing, but strangely also holding a little bit in reserve, because he's still got to ride for the next 15 minutes or so.
Yeah, so it's a real hard effort, but it's not the same as, obviously when he goes out and rides a team pursuit, just a few minutes worth of effort. So it can be difficult for riders that have more of that kind of fast twitch muscle fibres to pace longer efforts, just because they're able to generate such high levels of lactate that it can almost, you go too hard too early and you're absolutely up to your eyeballs in lactate, and it makes life very difficult moving forwards.
Now, it is interesting how different sorts of riders will adapt to the different sorts of terrain and efforts. But you are quite right, they've got so much power under the hood, it's easy just to overcook it a little bit, get to the point where that pain is, which you can hold, but normally it'll be just 4 or 5 minutes, not 45. So it is more of an pure endurance sort of effort.
Yeah. Henry Lawton going across the gap there, the 22-year-old. Looks like he's got some good legs on him today.
Yeah, that's a good move by Lawton, riding for the under-23 AG2I Citroën team. Another one of the big French World Tour teams with a feeder team based out of Chambéry in the south of France, but 13.5 seconds. So we talked about that ebb and flow, Danny, and he's done it again. He's always looking round, isn't he, measuring it. You can see it cross. They'll be out of sight briefly. So a superbly measured ride so far by Hollywood. It went up to 15, back down to 9, now up to 13. Exactly what we thought might happen is happening, but Leighton is moving clear now, and again it's St. Piran on the front trying to bring him back. So coming into final third now. I wouldn't say the sun is setting, it's occluded today, but the light's slowly starting to fade now. And maybe I think he might have stolen a couple of seconds on the peloton again here. An absolutely superb performance here by Ollie Wood. But has he got enough? There's still a lot of firepower behind. As Leighton looks around, and he will see the figure, I think it's of Noah Hobbs of Groupama FDJ Continental team, bringing him back.
He's just back from the Baby Giro as well, so he's obviously had some really good racing in his legs, so you can really come off with some good form when you come out of these longer stage races, having some really hard racing in the legs. So he's looking to show his form today.
Yeah, and have a conversation there with one of the riders from St. Piran. 14.6 seconds, so another couple of seconds taken from Ollie Wood. He's a mature rider, 27 years of age now, has been around a while, and the older you get, we talk about these young riders coming in, not quite fully formed, but nearly there. There's still a lot to say for experience. Look at Mark Cavendish winning stages of the Giro at 37, 38 years of age. Geraint Thomas. There is still room for the slightly older guys. This man's still a sprint chicken compared to myself, but 27 years of age, there's a lot of experience to draw from. So we know exactly what he needs to do here, won't he?
Yeah, he will do. And you mentioned Mark Cavendish there, a former winner of this race, and I'm sure that Ollie Wood would love to add this race to his Palmares, which, as we said before, is incredibly impressive. It would take a very long time to read out all of the achievements that Ollie Wood has had, but he'll be looking to add to that today.
I think the reason why the road national championships are so special is because there's so few. Just the circuit race, the road race and the time trial. So they are ultra special. As a brief foray off the front from Henry Leighton, should I say, has been brought back. A good little attack from him. Real punch, but it's Tarling now on the front, and Alex Briggs also in the mix. Briggs, well, it's not Briggs, in fact, it's the teammate of Briggs. Actually, it's somebody else. My mistake. Very similar kit as Watson goes now on the left-hand side. 19.2 seconds, Danny. This
It's
is looking
eking up.
good, isn't it?
Yeah, this is what we were saying, is the ebb and flow in the bunch behind, but obviously Ollie Wood is well into his rhythm and he will be getting these regular time updates, and obviously he's looking back on every corner as well, so he'll just notice the gap riding up ever so slightly.
Yeah, just making sure his aero socks are as aero as they can be, pulling them up back into that arms at 90 degrees, tucked down, and slowly but surely extending his lead. And another acceleration off the front. Rider struggling to hold on to the wheel in front, but what this man is able to do, although this is going to be hurting now, I think it's fair to say we're well past binding point. This is going to be painful, and there's still going to be around 15, 16, 17 minutes of racing approximately. They're lapping about 110, 19 approximately, and there's another acceleration here from Josh Tarling.
Yeah, Josh Tarling finishing third in this race last year. Obviously he wants to go better than that and add to his elite time trial jersey that he added to his Palmares on Wednesday. He's obviously got incredible form and just really laying down the watts now.
Again, he's only one rider, isn't he? I don't think his teammate started. So he's just got to look after himself in. They've gone over the top, so now he's been forced to chase. A little group with Sam Watson has gone clear, and also with him Alec Briggs. So Briggs and Watson now trying to bridge across, but they've got the best part of 14 seconds to make up. But that is a very strong duo indeed. So if they do start to collaborate with around 15, 16 minutes of racing, it's definitely a gap that they can bring back. But they need to do it now, and they need to work as one.
They do, and I think this is probably the best way to bring back a lone rider like this, is if you get a small group going off the front, because we're just seeing that ebb and flow in the bunch behind, where when there's so many riders still in contention, nobody wants to do the lion's share of the work to bring a rider back. So if you can create a situation whereby a group of 2, 3, 4 riders even, all with a vested interest of coming across the gap, and everyone commits to it, that's how you're going to get across the gap here. And we've seen over the last few laps this time gap just going up, so we'll wait for an update on that.
Oh, there we go, another reaction. 2 significant moves by the defending champion, and each one has brought the time gap. Well, it was still 17.4 seconds, but Bostock knows knows the leader, knows the strength of Wood. But I tell you what, Alex Briggs is having one of the races, one of the national championships of his career so far. It really is in the mix, not making any mistakes at the real sharp pointy end, as we've only got about 45, 50 riders left in the group. Back up to the front, 46 minutes of racing, and a real lovely view of the way that this man is taking these corners, out of the saddle, rolling a bit of gear, back onto the seafront, and whatever we can discern facially, he certainly looks right now to be really in control of this effort.
He does, he looks very calm and collected, doesn't he? And obviously he will be in an absolute world of pain now, but hopefully he's just measured his effort so that he's got something left for these final laps. But yeah, very impressive display of power from Ollie Wood at the moment. Just starting to see the bunch in the background now.
Yeah, they've definitely closed it down a little bit. A few more fresh legs on the front. Again, last time we saw the defending champion on the front, it was for the best part of a lap and a half. It was an attack that just turned in to a long pull on the front, bringing this gap together. There's been several attacks to try and go clear, but everybody's really wary of these little counter-attacks. So there's these accelerations. They take 3-4 seconds off the lead, and then it eases again, and that appears to be happening now. Although Briggs is happy to move through to the front. But that didn't really take too much of a dent out of the lead. 14.4 seconds now is the lead for Ollie Wood.
It's going to be absolutely nail-biting for the supporters on the side of the road, but also for Ollie Wood himself. You know, having that time gap where it's never really got above the kind of 20-second mark, that, you know, you're always just waiting for them to come roaring round the corner behind you. And yeah, this is a battle of minds as much as it is a battle of the legs.
It certainly is. How much pain can you tolerate as well? Several more riders being lapped now under this relentless tempo. And the rider on the front as well, very impressive. This is Tim Shawman from the Wheelbase Cabtex Castelli team. First time we've seen them at the front. A couple of their team have been lapped, but trying to bring the gap down to Ollie Wood. And there they are. He's got around So 150 metres lead as he leans into that corner. He's actually got this circuit totally and utterly dialed. Briefly we'll be able to drop into the slipstream of those riders in front as we look to the bunch, and I think he's briefly extended it. They accelerated into the corner, then eased off as they gone through the finish line there, haven't they? Clearly just by the shape of that group.
Yeah, you could just see the way that the group kind of fanned out across the road indicates that the pace is just knocked off in this bunch behind. Every time that they're in single file there, you know that the pace is really on as riders are just scrabbling for the wheel in front of them.
This is a William Roberts on the front now for the St Piran team, desperately trying to do something. Clearly riding, you'd imagine, for Leon Mazzone. I think his brother Tom Mazzone has been lapped. So still several riders from St Piran in the front, but this man at the moment is essentially riding a time trial. Another little look round. Briggs is there in third position. Another rider I haven't seen too much of has moved up there. That is William Perrott of the Embark Sprint BSS team in that navy blue kit. And I'd estimate now, Danny, we've only got around 35-40 riders left in the main field.
Yeah, it's certainly been whittled down under multiple attacks and just the sheer relentless nature of this crit race.
Well, 49 minutes and counting. We've got bang on 5 more minutes, so that's probably going to be about 3 and a bit laps before we get 5 laps to go. So I'd estimate roughly 7 or 8 laps to go, Danny. And
yes.
That's my rudimentary mathematics. It was never my strong point at school, though.
Well, we'll take your word for it, Matt. But yeah, it's not long to go now. We are certainly entering into the closing stages, and what a ride this has been from Ollie Wood so far.
It is indeed, but the rider that's trying to punt himself across, that's Joe Holt of the Techers team. So Joe Holt, a teammate of Alec Briggs, is now going clear. Good little move there. Not seen too much of him, but the rider trying to bring it back is local lad Harry Tanfield. So Harry Tanfield and that pale blue, almost aqua-coloured kit now sitting on the front. There's a lot of the other pre-race favourites have started to drop down. Well, there's Tarling. That's the furthest back I've seen him so far.
It is surprising in the latter stages to see him so far back, but Ollie Wood just sorting out the aero socks. When they slip down, they're not quite so aero anymore, are they?
That's it. He's fully aware of being 100% optimised, isn't he? So pulls up his socks out of the saddle, picks up that gentle helping hand of a tailwind, ever so slightly downhill briefly, so carrying a lot of pace. In a moment, it will swing over to the left-hand side, just trying to keep that racing line down this long esplanade here in Redcar. We had an exciting Women's Championships earlier on, an eventful race, and this has been a completely different one. It's a solo mission here for Ollie Wood, decorated on the track. Could this be the first time he pulls on National Championship jersey for the road? And there's another counter attack going clear, but I tell you what, he's opened up a good lead here. He's really established and built on the lead.
He certainly has. It looks like Josh Giddins of Lotto Destiny Development Team trying to come across the gap there. But this move looked like it was established by Joe Holt. Really good move by the 25-year-old. He's a former Welsh Criterium champion, so we'll be wanting to add the British title to his palmares.
You know, this is a fascinating little move. Joe Holt is there. Also there, William Perrott. And just coming across the gap, as you quite rightly identified, easy to spot in that Lotto Destiny to get. And for the first time, Sam Watson, a little bit on the back foot, has been policing all day. He's been at or near the head of affairs since the opening laps, and now finds himself having to chase. That's a good little counter-attack that's going clear, but this man's still solo, back into the finishing straight as Holt hits the front there. This is a good workman-like group, ideal size to be effective.
Yeah, this is what we were saying before, that the ideal way to try and get across to a lone leader, or in fact any kind of breakaway group, is that if you get a group going that is committed and everybody has a vested interest in trying to get across, you often find that the workload is shared somewhat evenly amongst the riders, or at least everyone is going to give a really good pull, so you stand a much better chance than with just the flying attacks that we've seen thus far. This is the most organised that we've seen the chase behind.
It certainly is, but it doesn't seem to be eating into the gap. In fact, for the first time, he almost had the entire finishing straight to himself. He was out of sight. Certainly won't be out of mind, but it's still hovering around 15 or 20 seconds. Tarling now having to sew together another split as Joe Holt takes that corner. Good bit of riding by Holt, but I tell you what, there was a good bit of riding there by number 9, Sam Watson, who's pulled himself back into the mix. This race certainly isn't over, but 19.1 seconds is a good lead to head into the final 6 or 7 laps of this race.
It certainly is, and these riders just haven't really been able to eat into the advantage that Ollie Wood has put out. So just under 20 seconds of advantage, which this is going to be really difficult for them to bring back. They've tried and tried, but really hasn't reduced the gap to the lone leader.
Well, Hollywood back into the finishing straight again, coming round very quickly, just over a minute. We've got, I think it might be, well, next time through, could be this time through, depends on the commissaires, doesn't it? It might be, we'll soon get, I think after this lap it will be 5 laps to go. We'll wait for confirmation, but we've only got under 10 minutes of racing to go, that is for sure. Can the field bring this man back? It has been a time trial criterium so far from this man. Decorated incredibly on the track, and there's been another crash on the left hand side. A couple of riders down, including Cameron McLaren of the Callas Mototip racing team, and the rain I think is starting to fall a little bit more here.
Yeah, we can see the rain on the camera lenses there, and unfortunately we do have a few riders that hit the deck on one of those turns.
Well, with that crash there, it's never something that we like to see, but of course circuit racing is not without its risks, as we know. It's about power and it's about skill, but several riders have gone down in that one. But thankfully, everybody is up, or nearly up anyway. Meanwhile, 16.9 seconds is the lead. It maxed out at just under 20 seconds for Hollywood as he heads to the far part of the circuit before swinging left onto Lord Street and then back onto the Esplanade. So at the moment, he's going to be out of sight, out of mind. So next time through the finishing line for Hollywood, we should see 5 laps to go. And here he is.
Thankfully the road was cleared just before Hollywood arrived there, because we wouldn't want to have a situation like we had it in the women's race where the race needed to be neutralised. Josh Giddins has gone down.
Well, that was on another corner, I think, as well. So they're having to take a couple of riders out. So number 39, also Sam Watson is out of the mix as well. That was that number 9 bicycle. So several of the riders who were trying to get across the gap have gone, and look at what this has done to the chase behind. We've only got about 15 riders in that group. The peloton has been split. 5 laps to go for Hollywood. He needs to keep a cool head. I think he's got the legs here, but he just needs to make sure that he takes these corners right, because this is getting treacherous now.
It really is, and unfortunately the race behind has been absolutely blown to pieces by a number of crashes, and we're just trying to take stock of exactly who is left in this bike race, because the field behind has been absolutely desecrated. But for Sam Watson, he just really needs sorry, I'm lost now. For Hollywood, with riders like Sam Watson and Josh Giddins that have already crashed out behind him, he will want to have that information relayed to him so that he knows exactly what riders are kind of left in the race behind and who is likely to be chasing him. So yeah, it's not the situation that we want to see, and we see now as a result of that the time gap gone up to 23 seconds now.
Well, that's the very nature, isn't it, of criterium racing, circuit racing. If you can get yourself in front, you can pick your lines round the bend. It's not quite as chaotic behind, but it's still not without its danger, as we saw earlier on in the women's race with Kate Archibald laying it down on the left-hander. But right now, this race is in his hands now. He's got a lead of over 20 seconds. It's a shame for Josh Giddins. Looked like he was in great form. The man from the Lotto Soudal under 23 squad shakes his head ruefully. 4 laps to go now for Hollywood. The 27-year-old from Wakefield thundering round this course here in Redcar, but a local lad, Harry Tanford, now trying to bring him back, and you can visibly see now, Danny, the surface water on this road. This last 3, well, it's hold on to your hats, folks, isn't it? Strap yourself in. This is going to be a nervous yet exciting last few laps.
It certainly is, and we're wincing every time the riders take the corners now, because we know just how slippery it is, and hopefully all the riders are able to stay safe, and we have a clean bike race in towards the finish. But yeah, this is getting treacherous out there now.
It still needs Harry Tanford, takes him into the corner. The rider on his wheel in the black of St Piran is Will Roberts. Then it's Noah Hobbs of Groupama FDJ also in the mix. Josh Gitter also back in the mix as well. Several other riders, but 30 seconds now. So 30.1 seconds. There's been another crash, we believe. Let's have a look. It's just a replay of the crash before. Oh, there we go. That's how slippery that is. That's a William Hobb. Got that. And then giving straight onto the top of that one. And that was the turn just after the finish line. Alex Briggs just picking his way around that one. Well, there you go. That just shows how dangerous that final corner has become. And lap by lap, that has gotten increasingly more treacherous, and you're almost not quite in unknown territory, but you're taking the risk each time you sort of cant the bike over into the corner.
You are, and as you say, it changes every lap. It's getting worse and worse, so the riders will have to take it slower and slower each time round. And yeah, you can just see there Ollie Wood just taking it relatively slow.
Sorry, I just thought there was a rogue spectator there. Thankfully, that was fine. But anyway, Ollie Wood is upright and he's okay, and he's got about 2 3/4 laps to go. This could be, well, he's had a lot of big wins, but one of his the biggest win on the road for Ollie Wood. And meanwhile, I think it's going to be a fight for the minor placings for the silver and bronze. It is Team Tekkers on the front there. Alex Briggs and Joe Holt trying to get into good position for the last couple of laps as Ollie Wood rounds another corner. It's countdown time for this man. What a superb performance this has been. Absolutely, well, nothing short of spectacular. 35 seconds now. This win is in his own hands.
It is, and as you say, it's been a phenomenal ride from Ollie Wood. Went on the attack relatively early on in this race, and we never really saw the time gap getting up above that kind of 20 seconds, and it came down to 8 seconds at one point. It looked like he was going to be caught. It looked like just a matter of time before they reeled him in, but as we were discussing at the time, it's that kind of ebb and flow in the bunch, and as a rider out on your own, you just have to keep that pressure on, keep putting the power down, and what will happen behind will happen behind. You have to be in your own rhythm, and this is something that Ollie Wood has done very well this evening.
2 laps to go now for Ollie Wood. This is the British National Circuit Race Championships for the elite men. We're in Yorkshire, we're in Redcar, we're by the sea, and the rain has started to fall. It's been an attritional, challenging race, and the rain started to fall increasingly more heavy in the last couple of laps, seeing several crashes. But this man now, Danny, has got the luxury, well, it's this small luxury that he can actually doesn't need to take any risks at all in the corners. He can dial it back, he can afford to lose a couple of seconds in these corners just to ensure that win, because if he pushes too far in the wet, it's all over.
It is, and you know, it doesn't matter if you win a national title by 35 seconds or 5 seconds, you know,
Exactly.
The win is the win. So for him, who's just going to want to stay safe, so you can really put the power down, squeeze every last watt out on these straights, but just making sure that when it comes to the turns that he is playing it safe. You do not want to throw a national title away at the last moment, but you can see 40 seconds now the gap, so it is going up despite him taking these corners relatively easy.
There's been no real organisation behind. Now, that's the very nature of circuit racing from time to time with these smaller teams, individual riders. If you can take things up at the front, it's okay on paper though saying take it up at the front. You need a big engine, you need to be so strong and skilled to do what this man is doing now. But Danny Christmas, 1 lap to go for Ollie Wood in around 1 minute 15 seconds time. It looks, unless something unusual happens, as if this man, as he adjusts his aero socks potentially for the final time, it looks like Ollie Woods is going to take the title. He just needs to make sure he doesn't make any mistakes in the final lap.
Yeah, he just needs to play it safe now. A final kilometre of racing for Ollie Wood, and we're starting to see some attacks from the group behind. There are still 2 medals, 2 spots on the podium up for grabs.
Well, there certainly are. Everybody wants to get on the podium, everybody wants that jersey, but it's not bad standing on the podium either in a National Road Championships, that's for sure. We have the time trials on Wednesday, we've got the road races on Sunday. Today it's all about the circuit race. City Centre criterion racing, it's spectacular, it's unpredictable, it's highly skilled. You need a big engine, you need to take risks, you need to gamble, and this man has done that perfectly now. Just 2 more corners, Danny, and this man will take the title. 38 seconds behind, and the former national champion, the defending champion, Matt Bostock, now takes things up at the front.
Matt Bostock, we know what a fast finish he's got, so coming into the final straight, he will be a real danger to try and take one of the remaining medals. But this is all about Ollie Wood now, coming into the final straight.
He can enjoy this, he can savour it, he can slow right down, he could almost walk across the line. He looks around, all he'll see is empty Redcar tarmac, because Ollie Wood from Wakefield, he's unattached now, but I tell you what, he's attached himself to the people of Redcar here. What a performance! Fortune favours the brave. Ollie Wood is your National Elite Criterium champion for 2023 in a superb solo performance. Look at that, in the gloom, in the rain, Oliver Wood emerges supreme. An absolutely cracking performance, but here we go. This is the bunch sprint from behind. It looks as if it's going to be Matt Bostock who's going to take the silver medal. Coming up behind is Tanfield. Or is he going to be taken on the line now? But it's definitely Bostock here. I think he's going to take the silver medal. It's a photo finish for third place. In fact, I think it was Tim Shulman who might have taken the bronze medal there, just on the line. But Matt Bostock and I think local lad Harry Tanfield skids to a halt there. Fourth place for him on the day. But what can you say about this man? That was a virtuoso performance, Danny.
Very, very impressive from Ollie Wood. Yeah, what can you say? A very different race to the women's, but equally impressive. But chapeau to Ollie Wood on his National Criterium Championships.
Well, we're in North Yorkshire. This man is a Yorkshireman. He comes from West Yorkshire, but I think they'll be pretty happy with that one, won't they? Superb win there. And remember, he rode it on his own as well. Started off just deep in the mix a little bit, just biding his time. And the one attack that he did basically took him to victory. But again, he didn't have it all his own way. It was only in the final 10 minutes that he started to really move clear with what happened behind. But in conditions like this, the best place to be is in front.
It is, and yeah, really brave, gutsy move from Ollie Wood. Just stretching out now. It's been a hard day in that aero position, isn't it? So just stretching out the back. But yeah, as you say, fortune favours the brave in that instance.
Yeah, Bostock second, and Tim Shulman there, indeed, it was in third place. So good ride there from the wheelbase team. They'll be very happy with that. So no World Tour riders on the podium this season, or this year, should I say. He could really soak up that win. Not very often in criterium racing you can actually enjoy the moment. Quite often the bunch are just behind, or it's a big bunch sprint, so he could really savour that last lap. But it's additional stress of those wet corners though. But he built that lead into an unassailable one. So Ollie Wood takes his first national title on the road in the criterium. And there he is under an umbrella, and there's his dad. Absolutely superb stuff. That was a brilliant ride, and we'll be seeing him on the podium very shortly. Well, I'm a bit there we go. Confirmation of your top 10. Oliver Wood takes the title in 2023. Matt Bostock of Black Spoke Pro Cycling in second. Last year's winner, of course, Tim Shulman of the wheelbase Cabtech Castelli team in third. Harry Tanfield fourth. Noah Hobbs in fifth. Max Rushby in sixth. Alex Briggs, solid performance by him in seventh for Teckers. David Hurd in eighth. William Roberts there for St Piran in ninth. And then Hugh Buck-Jones of the Wales Racing Academy rounding out your top 10 here in Redcar. I tell you what, fast and furious, unpredictable, crashes aplenty. That's basically, I think, the definition of criterium racing, isn't it? That's exactly what it is. It's it certainly does favour the brave, and you know what you know what you're getting into, and that's what makes it such a particular event that has a particular skill set, doesn't it? And also a particular mindset too.
It does, and we've seen two incredible races this evening, both very different in the style that they were raced, and of course different weather conditions as well. But yeah, as you say, fortune favours the brave, and having a solo win like that, brilliant way to round off a great evening of racing.
Yeah, it's been a wonderful week of racing so far, and thank you very much for joining me and Danny. We've enjoyed having your company today, seeing these coveted national champions jerseys given out. And of course now Ollie Wood will be riding in that jersey for the next 12 months when he rides a circuit race. But of course he'll be back on the track soon as well. That seems to be his big focus, but just bringing that track craft, that track ability on to the criterium circuit. Again, that's not unusual. They are really quite interchangeable. I think this particular road discipline is the closest you can get to anything like riding on the track, really, isn't it?
It is, in terms of the duration and the qualities of the riders that's required to succeed at this level. But Yeah, it's always interesting, isn't it? Because we get so many different types of riders that can be competitive in this Crit Championships, and it also really depends on the type of parkour that the championships offers. You know, just a couple of years ago when we were back racing in Lincoln, it was a very different course to what we have today. So again, it depends on the type of course that the organisers lay out. But yeah, I enjoyed this circuit today. It offered some challenges for the riders and provided some really good racing.
Well, Danny, just on that, we're going to take a little look back at what unfurled tonight. It was certainly slightly more clement at the start. A warm evening, around 18 at 20 degrees after a very sunny day here in Yorkshire. And the first opening laps were punctuated and dominated, in fact, by the World Tour riders. St Piran also at or near the head of affairs with their 7-strong team. There were a couple of crashes early on, including this man, Josh Tarling, one of the main protagonists there, the only rider from the Ineos Grenadiers team. And then it was with about, thinking back, it was about 35 or just before half distance, in fact, when Ollie Wood, after lurking at or near the head of affairs, first put his nose directly in the wind and went clear, and his lead hovered at between 9 and 15 seconds. And then in the final third of the race, that's when he really started to open things up. Constant conversations behind. There were several riders who were having a bit of a nightmare, but this man was having an absolute dream. Despite the big accelerations from some of the strongest riders in Great Britain behind, this man soloed to victory. There was brief flurries of hope from the peloton behind, but as we got deeper into the race and the lead widened, it was always going to be Ollie Wood. There was a crash with a few laps to go, taking down some notable riders, including Sam Watson, the silver medalist last year. But coming in to the final laps, there was a last-ditch attempt from Matt Bostock to bring things back. But in the end, this man could savour the moment. Ollie Wood, 27 years of age, is your new national champion. So there we go, a nice little summary of what's happened today. And we can now enjoy the moment on the podium and look ahead to road racing on Sunday as well, because I think it's fair to say you couldn't get a more different parkour on Sunday, because you can see that, of course, across here on GCN Plus as well, but that is a completely different kettle of fish. I think it's fair to say, Danny.
Oh, it is. You're going to have, I hope these riders have packed their best climbing legs for the road race, because it's going to be absolutely brutal. We're looking at around 2,800 metres of climbing for the women and over 4,000 metres of climbing for the men. I'm not sure I've ever seen a national championships in Britain with that much climbing. It's quite unusual, and some very different riders that will be in the mix for the win.
Yep, definitely one for the punchers and the climbers. As we look at the confirmation of the top 10, Oliver Wood, your new champion. Bostock there in second. Tim Shawman, they're going to be very happy with that bronze medal, or the wheelbase team, that's for sure. Tanfield, Hobbs, Rushby, Briggs, Hurd, Roberts and Jones. But of course, it's only 3 riders who make it finally to the podium. But yes, Danny, just to round off what you're talking about there, you can see the road races from flag to line on Sunday. I'll be joined by Hannah Walker to run you through those races. But as you say, yeah, I'm trying to think back. I think it might be 12 or 13 years ago in 2010 when we raced in Pendle for the men's road race anyway, that there was something anywhere near this. But yeah, over the last decade or so, there's nothing like the elevation gain. And as you said, we will see a different sort of rider winning on the course that we've got on Sunday. So please bear with us. I've no doubt there's a few wet wipes to the fore, cleaning down the riders. One of the best inventions, I think. The other day I was out on my bike,
ladies and gentlemen, the medal ceremony
I got
for the men's 2023
a chain tattoo on my leg, but wet wipes came to the rescue. Anyway, it's time for the podium.
And jersey will be presented by Bob Howden.
Bob Howden again makes his way gingerly onto the podium. We've been presenting the jerseys and the medals and the flowers.
Councillor Malcolm Head.
And there's the local mayor, the mayor of Redcar. Again, big thanks to Redcar in Cleveland for putting on this race. It's been a magnificent national championship so far.
Representing wheelbase,
but here we go.
Castelli, Tim Shawman.
Tim Shawman is your bronze medalist. A powerful sprint, sealing the bronze medal for the man from the wheelbase Cabtech Castelli team. And a well-deserved bronze medal for this man.
Second
Powerfully built lad.
place, representing the Black Spokes Pro Cycling Academy, Matt Bostock.
Matt Bostock from the Black Spoke Pro Cycling team. Last year was the national champion. This year will have to settle for the silver medal.
First place, your 2023 British Cycling National Circuit Race Champion. Riding as a British Cycling private member, Oliver Wood!
The man in black will be changing that jersey for the white, red, white and blue of national
Oliver
champion.
will receive the national
Big
champion
moment for this
jersey
man.
and of
A
course
superb
the
performance.
gold medal.
One attack and that ultimately led to the win. Perfectly timed, but boy did he have to work for this one. He's going to enjoy this moment, Danny, isn't he? Special moment.
Oh, it is an incredibly special moment to put that national championship jersey on.
Handshake from President of British Cycling Bob Howden, and now the medalist will receive the flowers.
So the mayor of Redcar presenting the flowers. And then in a minute we're going to get some champagne moments. I wonder if he wears
Ladies
a
and gentlemen,
pair of
your
safety goggles perhaps.
2023 British
But
Cycling
I think he'll take it.
Circuit Race Champions.
So there you go. Ollie Wood is your new national champion of the men's elite circuit race here in Redcar. The Yorkshireman in Yorkshire takes the title by the sea. A smiling Matt Bostock in second place,
just before
and Tim
they,
Shulman there in third.
Enjoy a champagne celebration. We'll grab a quick word with the hero of the hour.
Maybe some
Oliver
podium
Wood.
interviews.
Ollie, what an incredible win that was. You went away on your own, you took the moments and took it in both hands. Did you think you could stay away from that marauding bunch of riders behind you?
Wasn't quite sure, still sort of like 5 laps to go, because I didn't want to go too hard, didn't want to lay it all on the line, just like, I prefer a sprint to be honest. And just the way it was going, I didn't know what they were doing behind, so I just kept tapping away at my own rhythm, pressing on certain parts of the course, and yeah, just trying to use the wind and stuff, and held on.
Great circuit to take a win, a nice flat, fast course for you.
Yeah, it's fast. It got a bit hairy at the end with the rain, because I thought, oh, I hope I don't go too fast in the bunch, because I was creeping in that corners.
Well, it was a great win. Very well congratulated and deserved as well. Ladies and gentlemen, your national champion, Oliver Wood, along with the silver medal for Matt Bostock and the bronze medal for Tim Shulman. Now, gentlemen, you may uncork the champagne.
It's time for the champers. Big moment.
Oh,
Thankfully the foil has been taken off beforehand. And there you go, the champagne moment there
Enjoy the champagne
for
there.
Ollie Wood.
So well done
And,
to Ollie Wood, our new national champion, to Matt Bostock and to Tim Shulman.
Great crowd has assembled here in Redcar. We've seen some spectacular racing. Circuit racing always delivers. And there is your podium for 2023 for the elite men.
Cleveland for presenting our awards. We hope you enjoyed all the action.
Thanks to the mayor, and thanks to the people of Redcar for coming out. Looks like they've had a cracking night despite the rain.
This coming Sunday.
I hope you've been entertained. We certainly have. Aussie Larry there, a stalwart of British cycling, with the hat he's been wearing for the last decade or so. Let's have
Tim,
a
many
chat with Tim
congratulations, a
Shulman.
bronze medal in the national champs. Can't say fairer than that.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm really happy with it. Yeah, I didn't really expect that.
In terms of your career, that's by far the biggest achievement, isn't it? Today?
Yeah.
So, what does it tell you about your potential in the years to come?
I don't really know. I mean, it shows there's definitely potential, but I'm not really sure.
Up against Harry Tanfield in that sprint as well.
Yeah, that was quite hard actually. He stayed seated, and I wasn't really sure I was going to come around him.
Well done, and many congratulations.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Well, Matt Bostock, not quite the performance of last year, but another medal and a silver medal at that. That's a pretty impressive result.
Yeah, I'll take it. It's only one step down, so you can't expect every race to go how you plan it. So seconds, yeah, decent enough.
What was going on in the chase after Ollie clipped off and sort of left you behind? It never quite seemed to get organised, did it?
Yeah, I think it's sort of ideal having someone off the front. Sometimes it gives the bunch something to sort of guide their efforts off, and yeah, you can attack across to it and stuff. And I think it would have gone a bit more traditionally had it not rained just at the end there. I think we'd have sort of all started attacking, lighting it up. But nah, all credit to Ollie. He rode a strong race, and yeah, obviously the rain paid off for him.
And you rode a very aggressive last lap, didn't you, on the front a lot?
Yeah, I just didn't want to crash. So I thought I did pretty much like, I don't know, the last 3 laps from the front. I just want to stay out of trouble, and when it's raining, you can only really pedal for like 10 seconds at a time. So just 10 seconds hard, freewheel, 10 seconds. So it was the best way for me in the end.
All right, fair enough. Many congratulations, Matt.
Thank you. Cheers.
Thanks. And so Ollie, national champion. 4-time national champion, I think I'm right in saying, back in the day on the track.
You probably know better than me.
Well, I've had a little glance at Wikipedia, I'll be honest. But your first national championship on the road, it's a really satisfying result.
Yeah, I'm just happy to be here. Yeah, even more happy to be in a jersey. Obviously, the team folded at the start of the year, had like no racing, been doing a bit of track stuff, commitments in that. And it's just nice to come out and just show I can still do it and believe in myself as well.
Well, I mean, it was massively impressive. Was that a pre-planned tactic, or did that just happen?
No, absolutely not. It's usually my worst fear, to be honest, going so like that. But people say I should have more confidence, but I would like to be a realist. Well, people call me a pessimist as well, but And I was just going to go hard for a few laps, like with a few others, because it was definitely splitting behind, so I wanted the elastic to snap. And I was like, I'll just press for a bit, look back, no one there, great. 25 minutes in, along with, I still had like 35, 40 minutes to go on my own. But I was just tapping away, found decent rhythm, and then saw 5 to go. But it was actually quite just out there, tapping away on my own. I thought, is someone going to catch me? And no one ever did. And then saw 5 to go and just thought, well, may as well bring it home.
Massive ride, well done.
Thank you very much.
Cheers, Ollie.
Cheers.
The words of the national champion. Well, there we go. We've had 2 national champions awarded tonight here in Redcar. We've got more racing on Sunday, but from the seaside, from me, Matt Stevens and Danny Christmas, it's goodbye. But please do join us for wall-to-wall coverage of the men's and the women's road races on Sunday. But for now, it's goodbye. Thank you.